Hello, Council. It's good to see everybody today. It's going to be an interesting few days with you, and I'm sure we'll achieve your expectations on the final day. I just want to do a lead-in as I turn it over to the Director of Corporate Services and to the team there. Just want to make a few comments in reflection of the budget through the CAO chair. From my experience working with the SL team, as well as their respective teams, I believe the budget is responsible in the way it was developed and the intent of the SLT and management team in trying to minimize operational cost increases that we were able to control. The budget outlines service level increases in the areas of operational and external pressures, along with potential opportunities. The town is subject to pressures in relation to infrastructure investment due to financial constraints brought upon insufficient grant funding or depleting grant funding, and by maintaining less than inflation revenue increases in the form of taxation and user fees. Council will notice that even though the town has faced recent growth, the assessment growth dollars converted into real dollars were quickly absorbed by such things as operational projects, electricity, utility cost increases, fuel increases, the election, of course, insurance, of course, salaries. What's on my mind most as CAO is the outside of course, housing, the aquatic center project, and industrial park investment is a commitment to infrastructure funding and the well-being of employees, especially those on the front line. It's not all bad. There is still, you'll see in the budget, still investment in infrastructure. The advancement discussions on the aquatic center, the momentum of housing development, strong indication of the development of the industrial park, meaning an investment attraction, attention to community safety and engaged business sector, as we've learned recently with the business visits and the upcoming event on Wednesday, up to 40 potential businesses being brought in for an engagement exercise this week. With that, Council, just a quick lead in, I'll put it over to the Director of Corporate Services as we get into the meat of the budget. We are, yes. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay and Council. So today we are here to present the current draft 2025 operating budget for your consideration and review. So first I'll just bring notice to our vision and mission statement, which is primary in our focus for when we do our budget. So our vision, the Town of Innisfail's vision, is pride in our community's diversity, beauty, and economic prosperity. And the mission is creating an inclusive, entrepreneurial, sustainable, and safe community with a connection to the region and each other. So our values as well, so belonging. We are an inclusive, welcoming community where everyone feels a sense of home and family. We know that we are better together. Integrity, we do not compromise our principles. We make decisions based on sound data. Progress, we seek to adapt a changing community in the global environment. We are positioning the town for future success through innovation. Our spirit, we are strong, inclusive, and resilient. We embrace the rich diversity of our community. And sustainability, we deliver excellent services to our residents while keeping a clear focus on environmental, economic, and social impacts. So I'll just bring note to the strategic plan of councils from 2022 to 2025. So a connected community that fosters a sense of belonging, a robust and adaptable economy, respect for our environment, and provides strong leadership. So the 2024 budget objectives were basically maintained or hadn't really changed through the 2025 budget process. So I'll just bring everyone's attention to that. Through council strategic priorities, so ensuring housing diversity. So the Town of Innisfail is committed to fostering a diverse housing landscape to address the needs of all community members, from young families to seniors. This includes ensuring affordability, availability, and sustainability in our housing options, as well as meeting the recreational needs of our residents. Our goal is to enhance recreational opportunities that promote community well-being. This can include improving parks, recreational facilities, and programming to support active lifestyles. Recreation is not just about physical activity, it's about building community connections, promoting mental well-being, and enhancing quality of life. Sustainable asset management, so managing our assets such as roads, water systems, and buildings sustainably ensures they remain functionally safe and cost-effective for generations. Growing our energy hub. So energy innovation is at the core of economic growth and environmental sustainability. By positioning ourselves as a leader in the energy sector, we can attract investments and create jobs. So to provide high-quality municipal services valued by the residents. So high-quality municipal services are the foundation of a well-functioning community. From waste management to emergency services, residents depend on us to deliver excellence. Competitive property taxes are crucial for attracting and retaining residents and businesses. It's about balancing affordability with the need to fund essential services, as well as protecting the organizational health. So protecting the health of our organization means fostering a positive workplace culture, supporting our staff, and ensuring we have the capacity to meet the evolving needs of our community. Each of these priorities reflects our shared commitment to building a community that thrives today and tomorrow. So our town organizational structure has changed very little. So we have the Office of the CAO, Corporate Services, Operational Services, Community Services, and then Fire and Protective Services. Municipalities have very little options for where we can receive our funding from. So our basic funding tools are taxes, franchise fees, user fees, sale of goods and services, grant funding, and off-site levies. So taxes are the primary source of revenue for municipalities and are typically levied on property owners. Property taxes are calculated based on the assessed value of lands and buildings. So some of the challenges that we can have with these funding tools is property tax increases can be politically sensitive, and they are limited to our tax base. So we can never grow further than what our tax base actually is. Franchise fees are charges collected from utility companies, specifically electricity and natural gas companies, for the right to operate within a municipality and use our public land or infrastructure for their use. Then the utility providers then pass on these fees to consumers via their utility bills, effectively making residents and businesses the ultimate ratepayers. Franchise fees are indirectly borne by residents and businesses, potentially raising affordability concerns. Another challenge, it's limited to agreements with utility providers and therefore not applicable to all infrastructure types. User fees are charges levied on individuals or businesses for specific municipal services, or amenities they use. This is it's a fair distribution of cost for the users of those specific facilities. However, some challenges may be that high user fees may reduce accessibility for low-income residents, and reliance on fees can create revenue variability depending on service demand. However, this is a fair distribution of costs, and it creates an incentive for efficient resource usage. Sale of goods and services. Municipalities generate revenue through the sale of goods or services that they produce or provide. So this ranges from utility services to facility rentals. Advantages of this, it's a direct correlation between revenue and the services provided and less dependence on taxation for funding. However, challenges may be that revenue can fluctuate based on market conditions or service demand, and municipalities must ensure that pricing structures remain competitive and fair. Grant funding, so grants are financial contributions from other levels of government, either provincial or federal, or private organizations to fund specific projects or programs. Now, there is different types of grants. Capital grants, those are those large grants that we get to fund capital projects. Operational grants to support municipal services like transit or housing programs, and then conditional versus unconditional grants. So you're given a grant for a very specific purpose or item or purchase. Some of the challenges with these grants are often competitive with no guarantee of funding, and conditional grants may impose restrictive terms or require matching funds from the municipality. So yes, we may get a grant, but it may require some sort of tax dollars to support our portion of the grant. And finally, off-site levies. They are charges imposed on developers to cover the costs of infrastructure required to support new developments. So example, roads, wastewater systems, sewer systems, and other essential services that benefit new developments. Advantage is this promotes cost recovery for growth-related projects and encourages sustainable and planned urban development. However, this can increase the cost of housing or commercial development, and it does require detailed infrastructure planning to ensure levies are fairly assessed and allocated. So the budget before you today is currently sitting with a balanced budget. It does have a 4.3 tax increase included, with revenues and expenses sitting at $28,528,212. At this time, we don't have any current projections for the 2024 surplus. We will have those likely a bit closer to the end of the year. This budget does include COLA and merit increases for staffing, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about staffing as a whole. The budget does include a utility user increase of around $5.60, and that is based on the average 10 cube family usage. We are seeing the LGFF grant at $65,000, and that is allocated to the PACE bus as well as the historical village contributions. And we do have $120,000 for the direct costs of natural gas as well as fuel and diesel costs. So we did show this to council a week or so ago. These are some areas that we saw some increases overall in our budget. So we did see some salary increases of $861,000. Again, that does have merit and COLA included in there with some other increases as well. Repairs and maintenance across the entire organization has increased by just over $43,000. This includes vehicle repairs and maintenance, building repairs and maintenance, equipment. So it may be little bits across every single department, but as a whole, that's the increase we're seeing. Operating projects is increased by $144,000. Electricity is up $75,000. This is primarily from streetlights. Utilities are $21,000, so this is our water utilities specifically. Audit fees have increased by $17,000. We are doing 4 different audits this year. We will be doing our regular financial audit, our LAPP, which is our pension audit. We will be doing the library audit, and this year we do have to do an asset retirement obligation audit as well. So that's a new standard that's come forth for our financial statements, and because it's a new standard, they do have to audit the data that we provide them, and they have to ensure that it's correctness, and that takes its own audit. Our vehicle fuel has increased by $37,000. Computer programs is up by $25,000. We do see our election expenses for next year coming in at $60,000. Now there are a few reasons for this. One being that we are required to have an elector list, and this does come with a computer program that will house this for us, as well as obviously the increased staff costs for paper ballots and the counting that comes after that. We are seeing some insurance increases of about $30,000. Membership fees have increased by $15,000. We are seeing some staff training go up to $30,000, and we are seeing just actually a moderate increase from the RCMP of $17,000.
Director Vickers?
Yes.
Should we ask questions now or wait until?
No, absolutely. Ask questions whenever you have them.
So the electricity, the street light comment, can you explain that a little bit further, please?
So Mayor Barclay, the last few years, we go on a 5-year average for electricity costs. So we're just kind of truing up the last 2 years of higher electricity costs. And the brunt of that cost is not even actual electricity costs. So we see a per month bill of around $45,000 to $50,000 for our streetlights, and only $10,000 of that is actual electricity, and the rest are all distribution and admin fees.
And then, so vehicle costs, or the fuel. So curious why, like I'm not sure there's been an increase in fuel.
Yeah, so we have been buying new trucks. We do have extra staff. That is additional vehicles on top of what we had last year. So that is on top new costs already. And again, we do 5-year averages. So the last couple of years, it's just finally kind of catching up to what the actual costs are.
Okay, and then my last question, sorry, insurance.
No.
So are there opportunities to shop a little bit on insurance?
So our insurance comes from Alberta municipalities.
I realize that, yeah.
And it is an extremely large fund, and every single piece that's attached to our insurance is actually underwritten by a different insurance company. So yes, we could go out and do some tendering to look for our own insurance, but we would have to probably piece it out. Our liability insurance and our property insurance, our vehicle insurance is all underwritten by different companies. and they do that just for cost savings.
Okay, I'm just curious, I guess on the other side of AB Munis is RMA, and I know there's municipalities that use them, and I don't know whether it's more cost efficient, but I'm just wondering if we should look into that, or,
Definitely, it's something that we can consider for sure, due to the rising, the costs keep continually rising year after year.
so vehicles and everything, Director Vickers, would be under that?
Yes, every
Coverage.
piece of equipment we have, every vehicle we have.
Because I see the rate cap is coming off vehicle insurance as well now, so could see a pretty big increase in that too, so,
We could,
okay.
yes.
Can I ask one question? And I apologize, I should have asked it earlier. Going back to just your very opening statements, the 4.3% tax increase, does that include reserve for aquatic center as we did last year, the 2%? Or it does?
Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Wing, yes, so that does include a 2% for the pool. So operationally, we're at a 2.3% increase for administration.
Thank you.
Plus the 6.5 assessment increase.
Well, yes.
Okay.
We are seeing an
No, just so
assessment
I-
increase,
Just
but
so I understand,
yes.
okay, thanks.
Are we good? Any more questions on these? Yes?
Yeah, I wondered if, and thank you, Mayor Barclay, because I had some of the same. Can you give us some examples of the operating projects that accumulate?
So there is actually a slide later that has them all
Okay.
detailed out. We can jump to there now if you'd like, or we can.
No, let's wait.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions?
Yeah, Your Worship, to Director Vickers. I believe elections double the price now, right? It's gone from 30 to 60.
Yes, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Heistad, that is correct. So we have to account for more staff this year. We do have to have the elector list. We'll have more tables set up for people to come in, set up for their lines. And then we're actually unaware of how long this is going to take us to count afterwards. So we are anticipating approximately a day, 24 plus hours to actually do the counting. So we'll just see how long that takes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Director Vickers, does that also include the software costs? You mentioned there, you may be purchasing a software program?
Just 1 second.
Sorry.
Sorry, I got asked to move my mic a bit closer.
Okay,
I'll go through all
Okay.
the software costs as well.
Okay.
Once we get into the general administration page, we do have them all listed,
Okay.
and we'll go through them then. Okay. So our current staffing levels, we do have, in this budget today, we have 71 full-time FTEs. There are currently 3 vacancies in those numbers, though. So really, we have 68 staff that are actively employed with us. The part-time staff is 25 and firefighters is 28. Those are actual numbers as of today. And in the budget 2025, we do have 4 new full-time positions for FTEs. However, those aren't all new staffing. So we'll go through that a little bit later, but there is really 2 brand new FTEs in the budget, and there is 2 kind of reallocated. One was from last year that we came to council, asked to hire a new staff member. It got approved. So now it's technically new budget dollars for this year. We do have these summer staff in budget. We do have 17. However, only 16 are fully funded by the operating department. So we do have protective services. They will have 1. Roads will have 4. Parks has 8. Technically 9, but cemetery does get allocated 1 of their staff. Water and wastewater do share 1. Community services, that is kind of their skate park attendant, that comes from there. And we do have 1 engineering summer student. So this past year in 2024 was the first year that we had an engineering summer student. And we were actually able to save about $55,000 in engineering costs by having this summer student. And it only cost us, it was under $20,000 for the cost. So we really effectively saved $35,000 in some of those engineering costs just by having this summer student in '24. So salary budgeting is a complex process influenced by numerous independent factors. Key elements include anniversary dates, grid movements, performance management, and cost of living adjustments, which is COLA. Merit-based incentives and grid progression must align with salary structures, ensuring budgets reflect anticipated changes. Performance management adds another layer of complexity as merit-based increases vary across employers or employees and are often linked to performance evaluations. COLA adjustments tied to inflation rates must account for geographic and economic variations to maintain fairness and purchasing power. Additional factors such as turnover, benefit costs, and compliance with Canadian legislation further complicates the budgeting process. Turnover introduces challenges like vacancy gaps, recruitment expenses, and onboarding costs, while benefits tied to salaries such as pensions and insurance tend to increase annually, often outpacing wages. Compliance with pay equity laws, union agreements if we have them, which Innisfil does not, and minimum wage regulations adds another layer of responsibility, especially in dynamic workplaces. Other considerations include external market considerations, organizational growth, and variable pay components like bonuses or overtime. Retention strategies, including merit increases and long-term incentives, like must balance competitiveness with financial sustainability. Training and development investments also play a role, as they can reduce turnover and support internal promotions, which affect salary budgets in the long term. Accurate data and forecasting tools are essential for effective budgeting. The town of Innisfil does use a salary budgeting software to ensure that this correctness is going forward. And this way we are able to actually bridge out COLA over the next 5 years, as long as salary progressions inside our budget. So currently, when we did this budget and did the PowerPoint, the CPI was sitting at 1.6. However, checking this morning, it is sitting now at 2%. So CPI and inflation and the outlook for 2025. So the Consumer Price Index is a measure of the average change in prices over time for a fixed basket of goods and services, representing the cost of living. For Canada in 2025, CPI projections reflect a balance of moderate economic growth, lower energy prices, stable housing demand, and steady monetary policy, keeping inflation close to the Bank of Canada's 2% target. So the economic context and CBI targeting. So the Bank of Canada's inflation target, they do have a target range of 1 to 3, with 2% being its midpoint. This target influences their monetary policy decisions, aiming to keep inflation low and stable to preserve purchasing power and economic stability. The bank's latest projections show inflation holding close to 2% throughout 2025, slightly lower than recent years. This reflects efforts to manage inflation while supporting economic growth, following years of heightened inflation during the 2021-23 due to the global supply chain disruptions and pandemic-related factors. So some of the key factors expected to influence CPI in 2025. So energy costs, especially for gasoline, have a strong impact on CPI as they affect transportation, heating, and overall consumer costs. Recent forecasts anticipate a mild reduction in energy prices, with a stable to downward trend in global oil and gas prices due to increased supply and reduced demand in some markets. Lower energy costs tend to reduce the CPI as consumers pay less for transportation and utilities. And again, this is expected to be a moderating factor, keeping CPI close to 2%. So the Canadian housing market has been a significant driver of CPR in recent years. Rising mortgage interest rates in previous years increased housing costs, but rates will stabilize in 2025. Housing-related CPI pressures is expected to moderate. However, strong demand for rental properties, driven by population growth and immigration, may keep rental prices elevated, exerting an upward force on the CPI. Overall, the net effect is expected to be moderate, contributing slightly to CPI, but not as previously high levels. Food prices. Food costs are a highly variable component of the CPI. Factors such as global agriculture output, climate impacts, and supply chain efficiency will shape food inflation in 2025. Recent agriculture forecasts suggest some easing of food price inflation due to improved crop yields and reduced supply chain disruptions. However, specific food categories will still experience higher than average increases, depending on global conditions. So labor market dynamics. So wage growth can indirectly affect CPI through increased consumer purchasing power. Strong demand for skilled labor in sectors like healthcare, technology, and trades is expected to drive up wages. However, if wage increases outpace productivity gains, businesses may pass higher labor costs on to consumers, increasing the CPI. For 2025, wage growth is expected to align closely with inflation, minimizing major CPI impact. As well as immigration and population growth, Canada's high levels of immigration contribute to population growth, which can affect demand for housing, food, and services, indirectly impacting CPI. The government's plan for increased immigration in 2025, it's projected at around 1.7% growth. Will support demand in key sectors, but it is not expected to drive CPI significantly higher due to corresponding economic expansion and job creations. So just a breakdown of the components in 2025. So shelter costs do make up about 30% of that CPI basket. So that includes rent and utilities. It is one of the largest components. While mortgage rates stabilize, will ease pressure here. Strong rental demand will keep shelter inflation above the 2% target. Transportation is around 20% of CPI. Transportation costs, highly sensitive to energy prices, are expected to decrease slightly, with lower gasoline prices offsetting vehicle price increases. This is expected to reduce CPI pressures from this component. And lastly, food is around 16%. Food inflation is expected to moderate slightly, but will vary by category. So global crop yields and trade conditions will play critical roles in shaping food price trends. So any implications for businesses and wage planning in 2025? For organizations, setting COLA at around 2% aligns with projected inflation, helping employees maintain purchasing power without over-adjusting. And employers may need to consider sector-specific COLA adjustments if housing or other costs increase disproportionately in high-demand region or industries. Employer retention and wage competitiveness. In sectors with a strong labor demand, merit-based increases may exceed COLA to retain skilled employees. Giving a stable CPI, combining a 2% COLA with merit increases can help retain employees without significantly impacting budgets. Supply chain and production costs. So lower energy costs may reduce production and transportation expenses, easing cost pressures for good-intensive services, and this will help stabilize product pricing, contributing to a stable CPI. And then impacts on interest rates and consumer spending. With CPI around 2%, the Bank of Canada may maintain stable interest rates, promoting consumer spending and investment. This stability encourages steady economic growth without risking further inflationary pressures. So again, as I said before, we're talking from September. As of September 24, Canada's annual inflation rate stood at 1.6%, making it the lowest since February of 2021. This decline was primarily driven by a significant drop in gasoline prices, which fell by 10.7% since this time last year. And that is what contributed to the decrease in transportation costs. So the Bank of Canada has projected that inflation will remain close to its 2%, with key moderating influences from energy prices and stabilized housing costs, offset ongoing rental demand and moderate wage growth. So for businesses, aligning COLA with CPI projections provides consistency in salary adjustments, while sector-specific adjustments can ensure competitiveness. Maintaining a balanced approach to CPI-based planning allows organizations to support employees' purchasing power without overinflating budgets. So if we do maintain our inflationary number to around that 2%, we're hitting CPI on what the Bank of Canada kind of recommends that we do. So that would be not only for COLA for our staff, but also across all of our other budgets to see that inflationary increase. Yes. Any questions?
Not a question, just I heard you mention, and I happened to catch it on the news this morning too, that the current number as
Yes.
of this morning is 2%.
Yes.
So I think I absorbed all this, but I think there's a lot of optimism in there. That's just my opinion.
Okay, we'll move on to property taxes. So as of November 2024, Alberta's real estate market has demonstrated notable resilience and growth, with property values experiencing significant increases across various regions. So the average home price is $498,948, and that reflects a 0.8 increase from the previous month and a 9.7 rise compared to the same period last year. However, yesterday, Director Jenkins advised me that MLS, the specific information for Innisfil, it says that our average price is $378,000, and that's a 16% increase from last year. Now, these numbers are houses that are actively for sale or have been for sale this year, so not based on our own assessment numbers or anything like that. So some of the things that are influencing property values this year are rising real estate demands. So Alberta has seen an influx of new residents, including from inter-provincial migration drawn by employment opportunities. and lower housing costs compared to other provinces, as well as our quality of life. Increased demand for housing in cities like Calgary, Edmonton, and Central Alberta has driven up market values, directly influencing assessments. The tight housing supply also impacts this, so a limited inventory of homes for sale has created a seller's market, pushing property prices upward. Municipal assessors use market conditions as of July 1st to evaluate property values, reflecting these higher prices and assessments. And one of the biggest things that they look at when choosing assessments is what is your neighbored and like-minded houses sold for in your community. So if your neighbor sells their house for a much higher price, then your house will also go up in that same movement. So economic growth. So Alberta's economy, bolstered by the oil and gas sector, has been growing, creating a ripple effect on housing demand and property values. With rising wages and employment levels, more individuals and families are able to invest in real estate, contributing to an increased market competition. Inflation, as measured by the CPI, has elevated the cost of goods and services, including building materials and construction costs. So this increases the replacement cost of properties, leading to higher assessed values. So the escalating costs of materials and labor have increased and risen due to supply chain disruptions, increased global demand for raw materials, and higher labor costs. These factors have increased the market value of both newly built as well as existing homes. So even the people, when they do major renovations on your current home, that does increase the value at today's current rate with that renovation. So municipal budgeting needs also can impact, obviously, property assessments. Municipalities depend on property taxes to fund essential services such as schools, public safety, infrastructure, and waste management. Rising property assessments help maintain revenue as municipalities face increasing operational costs due to our own inflation. Municipalities periodically reassess properties to ensure valuations align with current market conditions. In years of significant market activity, these reassessments can result in noticeable increases. Even shifts in property use and development can increase property values. So when you have expansion, like cities and towns in Alberta have been expanding, with new developments increasing land values in surrounding areas. Property values in these zones often rise as infrastructure and amenities improve. When you build a new development, and it's a brand new development that has a high value, the surrounding developments will also see their assessments increase due to that build. Non-residential property assessments, such as industrial and commercial developments, have also increased due to economic growth. This indirectly impacts residential markets by creating jobs and attracting new residents. So external economic policy influences, such as interest rates, and while higher interest rates typically cool housing markets, Alberta's housing market has shown resilience due to strong demand and relative affordability compared to other provinces like Ontario and British Columbia. And we have become a popular destination for Canadians relocating from higher cost provinces. This population influx has added pressure to the housing market. When someone from a higher income or a higher valued property province sells their home for $1 million, they can come here and pay $50,000 over asking, no problem, and they're paying it for $600,000. That indirectly increases everyone else's assessment around them. Increased property assessments in Alberta stem from a combination of market demand, economic conditions, municipal strategies, and inflationary pressures. The outlook for 2025 suggests continued upward trends, though these may moderate depending on economic and policy developments. So some of the impacts for increased property assessments, so higher property taxes, so rising assessments typically will mean a result in property tax obligations unless municipalities downward their tax mill rate down. This can develop some economic stress on homeowners, as property owners may feel the financial strain as assessment and taxes rise, especially in an environment of high inflation. And then we do have appeal rights. So property owners are able to challenge their assessments if they believe they do not reflect fair market value or contain errors. So municipalities in Alberta do have to provide a 60-day window for appeals after notices are issued. And typically what happens, they're unhappy with their assessment, they call in to us, we connect them with the assessor, and they try to come to kind of an understanding. If they can't do that, then we actually come in and do official thing. So what's the future outlook for property assessments? So although the Bank of Canada is working to moderate inflation through interest rate hikes, Alberta may continue to experience higher than average inflation due to localized factors such as our robust economy and our population growth. Projections indicate continued increases in property values driven by a tight supply and rising demand in the housing market. And the Canadian Real Estate Association forecasts a 5% increase in the average home prices in Alberta for 2025. And Alberta's property market has experienced significant growth in 2024, driven by strong demand, economic resilience, and supply constraints. So we are still looking to see probably the bank or the real estate. The Canadian Real Estate Association is still seeing that Alberta is resilient, and we are going to continue to see that upward momentum in property property values.
Director Vickers, can I ask a question? Can you explain to us the, an overview, brief, like assessment when it comes to non-residential property and how that works, maybe compared to residential property?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of property that it is. So when you have your residential property, our assessors just come in and they look at the type of property that it is, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the size is, attached garage, not attached garage, and they look at what the sales have been, and then they give you a value, and that's what your assessment is. When it comes to businesses, there is some different ideas. Certain businesses, such as rental companies, actually have to provide their rental agreements and how much money they actually make in their rental, and that is tied to their assessment. And other companies, we do have quite a few that have machinery and equipment based inside. Those are actually assessed at a different level. Our rate is still the same, but it is they pay for the land, they pay for the buildings under the non-residential mill rate, and then they pay an additional rate for machinery and equipment. So for someone like Manville, they have a lot of machinery and equipment inside their building, and they are assessed at that. So if that building were to sell and all that machinery equipment got taken out, we would lose that assessment, as now it's just assessed as a building. And even if a new business went in, it wouldn't be assessed at the same rate. It all depends on the equipment that would be inside.
And then I know, I was going to say maybe 3 years ago now, we had, I believe it was a tax split of something like 65-35 between res and non-res. And now, I think I saw someplace in the budget binder, it was 80-20?
It's close to 80-20. I'd have to look to get those exact numbers, but
So more burden on residential.
there is more burden on residential. Yes, so when we do, say, a 1% tax hike, or it's $100,000, let's say, for revenue, only about 20 or 25,000 of that is going towards the businesses and the non-res.
And what's considered healthy? Like I thought it was more like 70-30.
75-25.
75-25,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, pivoting off of that question, so is that ratio change residential, non-residential due to the fact that the residential has increased in value faster than all the businesses and industrial?
Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Bates. Before I would want to go and do a little bit of analysis on the numbers before I would provide an answer for that. But I can do that, and maybe either tomorrow or Friday I can provide some kind of analysis on the breakdown of res to non-res and show some history about where it's come from.
And then the other question I'd have, I guess, is when assessing a business or an industry, is it considered, what it would, sort of like the insurance industry, what it would cost to rebuild that? Or is it more just, or is it based too, if a business sells right beside other businesses, just like a house?
Yes, so the value would be what are like-minded businesses selling for, right? So they would look at the type of land. Is it farmland that you're selling? Is it a commercial land? Is it industrial land? They're going to look at that and compare it to other municipalities of similar sales that they would have. Maybe they can't get a match here in Innisfil because we have limited businesses, but if the Starbucks sells, they're going to look at what has Starbucks sold for in central Alberta, and they're going to rate it similar to that. So they will match it to similar sales, but more across the province because they have to link it to that type of sale.
And do we get, you cited some values of houses that they're going up in the province, and then we kind of know what they are in our town. Do we get those statistics on businesses as well?
Absolutely. So when I tried to ask for it this year, but they didn't have it available yet. So we just get an estimate of our assessment at the end of October, and we don't get the official real assessment until April of next year. And in that, I will have the full breakdown of by property type and by actual roll number, and I can see the actual increase year over year by properties. and we can provide those averages and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just write a note here, 1 second. Okay, I just need a drink of my coffee. Okay, so we'll move on and we'll just, the next couple of, well, not couple, there's a lot of them, but the next ones are just kind of a high-level overview of the individual departments. We'll just go through the slides, you can ask the questions that you want, and when we're done going through this entire PowerPoint, we'll come dive back into the binder and go detailed in department by department, okay? So the first one is general government, so this is where our property taxes are based out of. So we are looking at a property tax revenue of $10,547,000. And we do still have the special tax bylaw revenue of $10,275. That is for 61st Avenue and 37th Street. That money, that $10,000, goes directly back into reserves annually. So we do have our franchise fees coming out of this department as well. So ATCO Gas, we are looking at receiving $698,000. We are sitting at 27% for ATCO Gas. We can only go to 30% as a cap, so we only have 3% more to go. If we did want to increase our ATCO franchise fee, 1%, 2%, or 3%, those are the prices that we would be receiving. So 1% just over $25,000, 2% $51,000, and 3% $77,000. Fortis franchise, we are sitting at $1.882 million. That is at 17%. It has a cap of 20, so we can only go 3% more for Fortis as well. And each percent for Fortis will get us $110,000. So 110 for 1, 221 for 2%, and 332 for 3%. This does have an increase transfer to reserve for the Aquatic Center. So that is showing a $589,000 transfer to reserve, and that is earmarked directly to go for that, building that debt capacity within our budget for the Aquatic Center. So each percent in taxes we increase will give us $101,000 more in revenue. And our assessment, we are seeing a total of 6.716%. Broken down further, that is an 8.5 residential and a 2.22 non-residential tax split. Again, I will have the exact breakdown. I'm not sure what number that is for new assessment builds, like all the new houses that we built this year, and what is actually assessment growth. I will have those numbers to you when we bring the tax bylaw in April of next year. Okay, we just have the last couple of years of assessment history, and I just did the percentage increase at the bottom. So from 21 to 22, again, that was a kind of a COVID recovery year, so we only saw moderate growth of 1.1%. In 2023, then we saw 5.14, 4.96, and then 6.74 in 2025. We do have some population growth information. So in 2016, we started tracking our information, and we can see the year, the population, and the annual dwellings. These are actual buildings built, so these aren't guesstimates, so these are actual buildings built. You can see in 2016, we did, and these are dwelling units, so may not be houses, but it could be a duplex is 2, a fourplex would be 4, things like that. Then we move into our population growth expectation, and I believe it was 2016, we did a growth assessment, and with the low growth at 1.27%, these are our recommendation, our expectations to hit that growth target. And as you can see, the annual dwelling units, we should be building about 51 plus each year to hit that low growth target. And as you can see from the previous annual dwelling units, we're not anywhere near, we're not even half that. I just bring this slide back. Again, just building debt capacity, just as a reminder always that we are saving for the pool. And in 2027, likely we will kind of be capped up for saving for the pool at that point. Here's the historical mill rates. I did just add a line on the bottom there just to show what that percentage works out to year over year. So we can see that starting from 2016 to 2024, all the different tax increases. So in 22, 23, and 24, you can see that there's been some significant tax increases as we recover from COVID and balance out that high inflationary years.
Excuse me, I have one question.
Yes.
Why do we say we would be capped out on the saving for the pool in 2027?
Just with,
Because we'll have done it, or?
no, just that we're building that debt payment capacity within our budget, and we needed to hit up at that $910,000, and that would fund a $10 million debenture payment. So we were just building up enough debt within our budget so that when it came time to pull out a debenture, that we're not hit with this huge $1 million payment all in one year that we just built it up. We've been saving these dollars since we started building it up, and we have been saving it in a reserve that will go towards this project, either the first couple of years of payments, or depending on how much we can end up save up, we might have a good chunk of the money, and we'll do a prepayment of that as well. But at least the debt payment is built within the budget.
Thank
So we do have some projected tax increases. These are just projected at the time that we reached out to some of these businesses or what we saw in some news articles. So these can change going forward. We do see that the City of Lacombe actually has passed theirs at 2.86%. And then we did have a couple that haven't yet responded yet, but we likely will have more information when we do bring the tax bylaw next year. So some of the reasons why some of these municipalities are seeing some tax increases, obviously inflationary pressures. Everywhere across Alberta is seeing the cost of goods and services rise due to inflation, as well as higher costs for construction materials, energy, and supplies. So anything that these municipalities are doing across the province are just costing more. Population growth and demand for services. Many Alberta cities are experiencing population growth, which increase the demand for public services like policing, fire protection, waste management, and transit, as well as required expanded infrastructure, including roads, schools, and recreation facilities. Municipalities all across Alberta have aging infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and water systems, and it is requiring costly repairs and replacements. And municipalities need additional funds to maintain and upgrade these crucial systems. As well as reduced provincial funding, we are no different than the rest of Albertans that have reported cuts in funding from provincial and federal governments, leading them to rely more on property taxes to meet our budget shortfalls, like MSI or the newly formed LGFF. It has been a drastic cut to municipalities, and we are seeing that. Rising labor costs. So municipal employees' wages and benefits represent a significant portion of town and city budgets. And rising living costs contribute to increased salary and pension obligations. As rising costs are for the workers of these municipalities, if they are intended to live in the municipality that they serve, they are met with rising housing and infrastructure costs as well. Environmental and climate change initiatives. So many cities and towns are allocating funds for climate adaptation and sustainability, such as flood mitigation and renewable energy initiatives. And these programs often require substantial upfront investments. Debt servicing and reserve fund contributions. Municipalities often have to borrow to fund major projects, leading to increased debt servicing costs. Even at a moderate 4 to 5% debenture loan can increase a $5 million loan into a $7.5 million loan over a period of 10 years. It really does add up those increased costs. Service level enhancements. So towns are expected to improve service levels, such as recreational programs and social services, to meet residential expectations. And then economic recovery post-COVID. Many municipalities in Alberta are still recovering from those COVID expenses. So the municipal tax dollar, if you'll note that on the house for the average residential property in Innisfil, last year we used a $300,000 number. This year we have increased that to show a more accurate number to $400,000 as our average kind of residential property. When I look at the municipal mill rate only, they are seeing about a $250 per month cost. Now, if I look at the same rate from last year at a $400,000 home, that's $243.29. So the increase for a $400,000 home is approximately $7 or so a month at the current rate. So that is the rate from last year versus the rate that we are proposing this year. Again, that is only municipal services, so then it's not including the school rate or the Seniors Foundation. And again,
I had a
yes.
question. Is that okay?
Of course.
A question through Mayor Barclay to Director Vickers. Just curious on the tax increases. do we know what the franchise fees are for those communities as well when you go back to that slide?
Mayor Barclay, through to Councillor Heistad, I don't currently. We could probably do a bit of research and link up those municipalities, what their franchise fee agreement, and also what their mill rate likely is, because they may only be doing a 2 or 3% tax increase, but if their mill rate is already twice as high as ours, it may not relate the same kind of information.
Thanks.
Okay, so just let me write that down here.
No, yeah, I have one more
Okay,
question.
yes.
In your earlier discussion, like the little example we just looked at for the average of 400,000, did I hear you say that MLS has just revealed that we're at 386? Is that
Yes, 370, 376?
378
is what, but that's what the prices are selling for over the last year over year. That's
okay?
the
No, it's
average
just
home selling price.
so we're in the ballpark.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's why I did want to increase that. If we keep it at 300, that feels a bit disingenuous, when really our average price is around 400,000. And when I do have the detailed assessment price, I'll have that exact number as well for residential properties, what the average assessed property is here in Innisfil, as well as the average assessment increase that they're receiving. Okay, so we do have $120,000 set aside for the carbon tax within our budget. We do look at our natural gas specifically to the gigajoules, and it's approximately $4.75 per gigajoule this year, as well as I believe it's 17 cents for fuel and about 11 cents per liter for diesel. And we do, these are actual costs that we put into this account each year. We are budgeting that it will be here for the entire year, and if things change throughout next year, which they could, then we will have to come to council with some adjustments, or we'll see how that plays through. Yes?
So the question I have on the carbon tax, when we get all this information that is high level, like I'm pretty sure the mayor is right that the consumer carbon tax probably will disappear.
But
will-
we may not
but
be a consumer.
That's my question.
Yeah,
Are
we don't-
are
we
we
don't know
hearing anything that says how they might treat municipalities or charities or?
No.
No.
Mayor Barclay, through to Councillor Bates, we haven't heard anything of the sort. I anticipate that may or may not happen until someone new takes over and they kind of outline their, or when they actually get into the actual running their campaign, that's when we may see a bit
Yeah.
more information, but likely that may or may not come out until next summer sometime.
And even that, just a statement, will have an effect on, because I think what I've heard is the opposition say they'll keep it in on the big, whatever the big, whatever
Yes.
that is, it could impact some of our industry.
Alberta has had a carbon tax for decades in very specific industry, like those big industrial emitters. And I highly doubt that they would take that one away. I'm not sure of the commercial aspect, whether
Yeah.
commercial businesses would still have to pay that, or how they would link that out.
Yeah.
But once we get some more details, we may have to
Yep.
come back to council for a budget adjustment, or at least some information for council to consider. But again, we don't know that at this
So
time.
I think we have to assume that we have to keep paying it.
Yes.
Thank
We are
you.
assuming that we will pay it for the full year, and until we know otherwise, we'll come and provide you guys with that information. Okay, so we'll get into council's budget line. It does look a little bit different this year, but nothing really has changed. It's just kind of moved around in different areas. So, for example, we have a specific line item now for council professional development. So that is that budget that each councillor gets to manage on their own. The mayor gets 6,000, each councillor gets 4,000. This is from the council remuneration policy. So we did move that into a separate line item. This year we had registration fees and travel and subsistence split into 2 accounts. It was difficult for us to manage, so we're going to put it all into one account just for ease of use. We also have a new sponsorship line in here as well. So this is $5,000. It's the same dollar value. It's just moved from that advertising and promotion line to its own line so we can track it separately. And those are all those sponsorships from the new sponsorship policy that when requests come in, they'll come before council and it will come out of this line for approval. So you can see that advertising and promotions is down a bit this year. It's down to $18,000. However, that is the sponsorships out. And we also reallocated the Fireworks for Canada Day just to the project costing line, just so that the entire project cost is all together, right? And under registration fees, you can see that it is only $7,000. That is just, we've only identified the AB Munis Conference, as well as some other small, like, if we ever paid for a Spring Leaders Caucus here, kind of some of those kinds of things, we did account for a little bit. But other than that, any other conference, trade show, any other event that council wants to go to will come out of your professional development budget line. The one new thing we do see this year is that the election costs do come out of this year's budget on council.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bates.
Where did you say the fireworks went to?
So they move to, so we have special events in a different location, and they pay for the rest of the Canada Day event, so we just reallocated the dollars for the
Because that
fireworks.
used to be here.
It used to come out of this line, but we wanted to keep the entire project costing all together, so when we look at it years in the future, we can have an accurate cost of what that project was without having to look in multiple budgets.
And where would FCM be?
So FCM is a project that you would pull out of your professional development now.
And
So it's not specifically budgeted for each counselor. It would be one, if you want to go, you can go, and you just pull it out of your own professional development.
okay, for the attendance, but what about the actual membership?
So the memberships will go somewhere else, yeah. Memberships are somewhere else.
Okay.
So Director Vickers, back to the election expense.
Yep.
So are you tracking all the time that you have spent in researching what you need to do and ensuring that that's 60 is what it should be? Because there has been some chatter that maybe smaller municipalities would be able to get some of the money back. And whether that comes to fruition or not, who knows, but
Mayor Barclay, I have not been tracking my
Well-
time currently, or our legislative coordinator's time either, because
Okay.
both of us have spent significant time on the research around this and training sessions with the municipal government on this.
well,
But we can work on that.
I'm not the boss, but I think that would be something that would be wise to do, because it's been a lot of work and a lot of change that you're having to deal with, and, you know, even getting election workers trained and everything else.
Yes, that will be additional cost that will happen outside of election time. We'll have probably a handful of sessions where they'll expect it to come in here for an hour or two, go over the procedure, what forms to fill out. Like I said, we do have a computer program that we're using this year, so we have to assign computers to everyone and train them how to use this computer program
Plus
as
the
well.
registration,
Yep.
or the registry, I guess.
Yes, so there's no cost for us receiving the registry from Elections Alberta, but there is a cost for the program that we're using it on, right? Which is a much better program than using paper,
Yeah.
because it's our first year using an elector list. If we had paper, everyone had their own binder, we're worried that there would be
Well,
more.
be careful when you're not using paper, because you never know what might happen, but, you know, the 60 might be 100.
Unfortunately, we are unaware of what the counting cost would be. I feel like that's our biggest risk. How long is it going to take us to do the counting? How many staff do we need to hire to get the counting done? We do have to have everything finished, I believe, by the Friday, and we have to have that reported to Elections Alberta for our results. So hopefully, not many municipalities in Alberta have anything that we can go off of for timing and timelines, because most people have not paper counted in decades.
Yeah,
So
for sure. No, I just want
if Mayor
just want us
Barclay,
to make sure that that line is reflective, especially if there is some opportunity to
yes,
receive
Mayor
some
Barclay, I'll
funding.
definitely keep my eyes open if there's any grant funding or any repayment options. If you have any type of information, please share, and then we'll look into that for sure. At least if we know what kind of tracking we need to do now, so that we can better do that, respond to it in the future, right? Because it may be a grant that opens up after the election.
It may be worthwhile reaching out to municipal affairs to inquire.
And council, this is your function area, so if you wish to have that direct cost associated with your budget, we can easily track
Okay.
internal costs through our timesheet software.
Absolutely, yeah. We can track the exact hour cost that it takes all staff to do election wages or election anything, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And anything we do now may or may not stay the same in a future election year, but at least this will give us the history of knowledge to know if in a future election year, if we do have to count paper ballots again, at least we have that knowledge now too from this year.
Well, if you add everything in, it could be a 1% tax
Could be,
increase, right?
absolutely.
100,000, so.
Just for that alone, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is an unmitigatable expense. We can't get around this expense.
Just out of curiosity, do we know the last time we actually did it? Just,
So I'll be honest, I looked as far back as I could to about 2004, and we had electronic voting ever since then. So I couldn't find any history past that, but I'm sure at some point we counted, right?
oh, no, I don't.
Yeah,
I think I helped do it once.
yes. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to general admin. So here's where the computer maintenance comes out of. So this year it is $270,000, and we'll just kind of go over all what that includes. So for Real IT Solutions, inside that, we pay for all of our all of our emails, our email monitoring, our email safety and security. He deals with all that. He deals with every single computer in the town that we own, every single location. He goes in and does monthly updates. There is a small portion of costs if a staff member shows up at his office looking for help on their phone or their laptop or something, including yourselves, that he has some budget in there to help staff. He doesn't have to turn them away. So that does cover Adobe costs. So Diamond, that is our finance software. Civic Web, that is our management software for agendas, as well as our complaint system. Zoom. When I say council chambers, there is some dollars in there for the management of the electronics of this equipment. So it would be if something were to happen and we have to get someone in here emergency tomorrow to come fix something, there's costs in there for that. Hippo, so that is our facility management software for our facility manager. She uses that. ActiveNet is our facility software booking program, as well as the program that they use at the pool for all the drop-in fees and all things like that. Catalyst, so this is our upgraded Muni site. So this is our GIS web-based software, as well as additional expansion of, what other things? Yep, permitting and work orders. So that is a bit of expanded. So Altalis is kind of a link to our GIS. It's really a mapping software upgrade that we have to pay for once a year. They come in and do the update. Fleet Pro, so that is what our mechanic uses to balance all of our repairs and maintenance, and they track all of those costs in there. The town app comes out of here. AutoCAD, so this is a relatively new cost. So the way AutoCAD worked before was that you would buy it once and it would be forever permanent on your computer. Just like a lot of other things, it's not like that anymore. So it's now a subscription-based service that you do have to pay for it, and it's an annual-based service, right? We currently do have one computer that does have the old AutoCAD on it. And once that computer is due for replacement, we will have to increase that to a second AutoCAD fee for the year. So First U, this is our upgraded fire department software. So all calls, any training night, all of those things for the fire department and everything they do runs through this system, and it just helps them do that. Social Pinpoint is a new add-on this year. So it really is a public participation software that we can use for many, many different things. For example, budgeting. Instead of doing a boring budget survey, we can put a page on there that says, hey, Councillor Wing, you have $100, and here's all the buckets that you need to put it in. You have to put at least $1 in every bucket. How do you want your budget designed, right? And actually educate the public where it's like, well, we can't just put it all into police because that's what they want to increase services, so just increase. Well, no, you have to even everything out and you have to put certain dollars into everything, just as a way to educate staff a little bit differently around public hearings or any type of public participation we're wanting to do. The future bike park facility, any type of new facility we want to do, any type of subdivision development, we can really utilize this program for a different way. So that's all that is included in our computer maintenance budget. The town app was relocated to this line from a different budget, so that isn't technically increased dollars to this line, it's just reallocated from a different area. We do have contracted services, so we do have an independent HR consultant that we do pay for, and it comes out of this budget, as well as our answering service. So when we're closed, either it's a holiday or it's the weekend or it's just 4:30 and someone calls the town office, someone will answer the phone, and it is this on-call after-hour service. And depending on the nature of the call, if it's just something like, oh, I just want to talk about my utility bill, okay, we'll send the note and someone will call you back Monday morning. But if it's, hey, I see there's water running down the street, like there's something going on, they actually will reach out and call and maintain contact through our on-call service and actually get that work in to provide those service to our residents. As well as our shredded costs come out of here as well. General insurance, that is funded for the entire organization under here. Equipment under 5K, so this is closely linked to For Real IT Solutions, so he does have a listing of all of our computers and laptops for the whole town, and we do earmark 6 laptops and 6 desktop computers for replacement each year, and that does come out of that line. Our legal services come out of this line, so this is just any general legal services. If we need a bylaw reviewed or have any type of legal question about the MGA or other policy or act, then that's there for us there. Our assessor services, so this is Wild Rose Assessment Services. They assess all of our properties, and as well as our audit fees. So again, we are sitting at $60,000 for audit, which is an increase, but we are doing 4 different audits this year.
Another one. Is postage somewhere else or, and courier?
So we do have some postage in this account, but the brunt of the postage comes out of the water, wastewater, and garbage accounts. We'll look into that deeply once we get into the detailed sheets likely. We can go into line by line and you can ask about postage.
Okay, and just so I don't forget it, on a personal basis, I'd doubled up getting electronic notification and mail for my utilities because I had switched to electronic and then it skipped a month and I did get caught and paid a fine. So then I doubled up again. It's been reliable. Are we finding from our side it's reliable?
Directly through Councillor Bates.
I could drop $12 a year by stopping double. I don't know if anybody else is doing that. I'm just saying, if it's reliable, then
It's reliable.
Yes, Mayor Barclay through Councillor Bates, I haven't heard of any instances where that has happened consistently. I will say that it is likely that emails get lost out there sometimes on occasion, and there's not much that we can do
well,
about
when
that.
it happened, the time it happened, which is probably over a year now, when I came in and talked about it, it was not unusual that there would be several dumped that didn't go.
So certain email providers, when we're sending out our emails, we're sending out like 1,800 all at once or 1,500 all at once. Certain other email providers out there will look at that and think, hey, that looks sketchy, and they'll try to block some of those emails out. So it just depends on the security settings of your own email provider. And if you have like a Google or a standard email, you can't really go in and change your own security settings to let that in.
Now, like I say, it only happened once, but it
Yeah.
caused me to initiate postage, which I'd sure like to get rid of it. On the mayor's account, I'm going to drop my. Thank you.
Was there any more for this line?
Thank you. Through to Director Vickers. Looking at the computer maintenance costs, all of those costs except the one for Real IT Solutions are for apps or programs. Is that right? Subscriptions?
Correct, yes.
So it is for Real IT Solutions, would that be considered like a contracted service?
It could be.
Okay, and I'm wondering if it's possible to get an amount of the apps and subscriptions separated out from that?
Would you consider emails to be part of the subscription-based fee, because that is the brunt of his cost. It's about $35,000 for our email management every year. That's direct Microsoft costs.
So you've got some things bundled up within that as well?
Yeah, so that's,
Oh.
like, everything from For Real IT is lumped into that bundle. So that would include, yes, that does include his monthly management for town services. So that's him coming, updating our laptops and our computers, things like that, doing any upgrades. Anytime there's been a breach, he deals with that. But the brunt of that cost is the email cost from Microsoft. But I can still break that down for you 100%.
Yeah, so just that separated out from, starting from Adobe and everything else downwards?
You betcha.
Thank you. I guess one more question, if that's all right.
Of course.
Do you ever go through all of these subscriptions, or are all of these subscriptions 100% necessary? Like, I know that might sound like a stupid question, but I know that sometimes the subscriptions could be weeded out.
So every single one of these subscriptions are actively used by certain departments. Like I said, things like Hippo and Fleet Pro, those are actively used for the management of our asset management software pretty much. In Hippo, every single one of our buildings is in there. We have our work order system in there when she wants to assign a task to specific workers. Again, Catalyst is our GIS web mapping software.
That's okay. And
Yeah.
then I'm thinking, we have been kind of going back and forth with that DocuSign. I don't know if that's
That
up
is
for discussion
not-
today,
Yes,
thinking
it
about
is.
that. Okay, good.
It's up for discussion.
Yeah.
It is, however, not included in the budget. So
Okay,
if we
yeah.
do want to add it, that would be additional dollars into this budget.
Okay, thank you.
So Director Vickers, on that note, we have a postal strike on right now. I don't know what we're doing with checks that are getting signed or bills that are coming in, but have you looked, or are you thinking about looking into a program where we're not signing physical checks?
So
like we once
we
were?
have started to talk about like EFT payments
Yeah.
and what that would look like. Our system can physically do it. We just have to get it set up. It likely will take some time. It won't
Okay.
be a quick turnaround. So we are having to manage a different way in this current strike, but
And additional cost to doing that?
so
or-
there's, outside of the initial setup costs, which could be a few $1,000s, likely we'd have to have Diamond come in and that we'd have to coordinate with the bank to make sure the uploads were correct. After that, there would be no additional cost. So once initial setup fee were done, it would just be no different than, and in fact, we wouldn't have to pay for as many checks anymore. So long run, it would actually save us dollars year over year, right, years away, right? But
So is that something that you will just determine internally, that you will move forward for? Is that something that you need to bring to council, or?
Mayor Barclay, if it's related to budget impact, we definitely would. We'd probably inform you based on efficiencies
Yeah.
gained. But something we'd want to present to council,
Yeah.
maybe not seek formal direction, but
Okay,
to advise.
that's what I was wondering. Okay,
maybe the only direction to seek is we would no longer be requiring a double signature. So how we would outline that with council, maybe that's additional paper that you would sign off on when you sign paper checks, how we get that information to council that we paid these the right way, right? So that would be what we would want to discuss with council.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna add on so with the Catalyst software, council may recall earlier this year, we came with the updated contract with Catalyst, which adds upgraded permitting and licensing, which will allow us to accept the vast majority of our applications online through a public portal. So we're in the process of setting up those workflows right now, and it'll probably be the first, probably second quarter, we'll start to be able to roll out, development permitting, those types of things where people are able to apply online. They will still have the paper option going forward, but that's a change. And as well with that Catalyst, we have explored opportunities where there could be opportunities. So Hippo, for example, and the work order software, and just trying to figure out if they are able to provide the same functionality to the different departments, because it's a challenge, because we do run a lot of different kind of functional groups. The management of a building is different than the management of the water, wastewater complaint system, those types of things.
Another thing with the Catalyst is you can actually heat map like complaints and issues. So there's a work order system. If we'll put in work orders, okay, this road has had a ton of maintenance done on it, right? So we can actually do some heat mapping for the work order system. So better way, like our regular repairs and maintenance, we can actually track it, and now that may impact, well, now we need to do this road because the last 3 years have had major investment in from just our standard repairs and maintenance. It's now due for the official upgrade, and it can impact, just so that we're making better decisions as well. Okay. So we'll move on. So police services. So our contract for 2025 did increase to $1,882,223. So that is an increase of $17,686, which is relatively moderate. If you can see here on the next page, we just have their contract history, and on the side we do see some increases. You can see in 2025 that is an updated number. Our original number was $1,911,156. And that showed a $46,000 difference, so they just adjusted 2025 only. 26 goes back to normal, so we will still see that full increase next year. Any questions on our CMP? Okay. So fire services. So we do have Red Deer County revenue. They do pay us a Red Deer County grant based on fire services. We have identified that at $155,000 this year. Fire bylaw revenue. So just yesterday, Manager Leith brought forward a potential bylaw for your review and discussion, and in that included some fire revenue associated with actual fire calls. So we are attributing some revenue to that. However, just a disclosure, if for some reason council does not pass that bylaw, we would then have to come in here and remove this revenue portion. Depending on when that bylaw got passed or not passed, we would then have to do a budget adjustment to remove this. So just to clarify that. So fire services master plan, that was in the budget this year. We are moving that to next year. So next year will be year 1, and then 26, and then 27. It's a 3-year fire services master plan. There is some new dollars in this budget under an operating project for $20,000. It is a new cadet program, and we'll get into more of the details this afternoon or later when we go through those individual lines. Radio replacement, we do have to account for radio replacements each year. We do have a ton. Each fireman does have their own. So they are about $3,500 to change out each year, and if we needed a new base station, those are about $6,000. So we do have to identify a set number there. Telecommunications, so that includes the biggest portion of that is the dispatch services from Red Deer 911. That's most of that costing, as well as any radio. We do have to pay for certain radio fees with the Government of Canada, just to have radio licensing, as well as any landlines and internet at the fire hall. And firefighting supplies, we did maintain at that $55,000. Just the bunker gear is about $3,200 or $3,500 per each one to purchase. Helmets are approximately $600, boots upwards of $700, and gloves $200. So anytime we hire a new staff member, we do have to fully outfit them with a, not necessarily custom fit, but it is sized for the size of their body. And there is, I believe, a 10-year lifespan on some of this equipment that then we have to rebuy new stuff every year or every 10 years.
That's a question to those in the know. So firefighting gear, jackets and stuff, I understand that there's a new jacket that some municipalities are ordering for their firefighters that are healthier. I'm not sure what firefighting jackets are made out of, but there's been, I guess, a lot of concerns about gear in the past, and I don't know if you're aware of that, Director Kennedy. You're on the team. But
Manager Leith will be here this afternoon. Mayor
okay,
Barclay to answer
I'll
the
ask him.
technical
Sure. Yeah,
questions.
thanks.
Okay, and we just wanted to do a comparison of the fire call type from, you see, 22, 23, and 24. So in 2022, the total call volume was 378. In 2023, the call volume ended up being 449. Right now, based on the date that I got this information, for 2024, we were already seeing 384 384 calls for this year to date. And if you look at November and December, roughly could be upwards of 40 calls per month. We could see an increase of still 80 calls this year, and that could hit us up to that 460 plus mark. So every year we are seeing that consistent kind of increase for call volume each year. Emergency management, relatively no change to this budget from last year. We do identify staff training for $5,000. The operating project from 2024 for Emergency Coordination Center exercise, which is supposed to happen every 2 years, has been moved to 2025 because the province has a different year end than we do, and it's happening in February. So technically for them, it's still the same year, even though for us it bridges to another year. So the helipad, again, helipad did little changes. The costs for the helipad include daily inspection of the helipad, training any new staff, any miscellaneous maintenance that is there, specifically like the windsock, any light bulbs replacement, all that kind of stuff, as well as snow removal in the winter times. They do that as well. And I did have the landings. This came from our helipad supervisor, I guess. In 2022, we had 1 landing. In 2023, we had 3, and 24, we've had 4. So bylaw. The bylaw department did see a significant increase this year. It is going from 2 CPOs now to 3 CPOs. So everything did have to kind of transition up accordingly. Fuel costs, uniform costs, all that has to go from 2 now to 3. So effectively, it almost increased by 50%. And this is the one position that I was specifically talking about, was approved by council midway through the year. It is new budget dollars this year that we are seeing now. And this does include 1 summer student, and then a transfer to reserve to the fleet reserve for $20,000. I also did bring forward their complaint type and their volume. So you can see in 2022, we had a total of 731 complaints that the peace officers dealt with. In 2023, it was basically similar at 735, so an increase of 4. And this year, currently, we're at 644. So I don't have the breakdown by month, but typically, we'll probably surpass our 730 mark that we've maintained at the last 2 years. One thing that we did kind of want to talk about is the bylaw tickets and how it's kind of dealt with. So a way to explain it, it's kind of, we need to talk about a few different things. So first, we want to talk about provincial tickets written. So you can see in 2021 and 22, those are kind of coming out of COVID. We weren't really focused on writing tickets, more about education, giving everyone kind of the benefit of the doubt through COVID. You can see in 23 and 24 to date, drastically increased the tickets, the amount of tickets written. However, when you look to the next column, so these are provincial tickets paid, you can see that it's drastically different. And you can see, like, even this year, we've written $83,000 worth of tickets, but so far to date, we've only received $39,000 of provincial revenue. However, we also have to remove the victim services amount, which we're earmarking right now at 25%. That will go up to 40% once the new e-ticketing fully gets underway. So we have to remove our victim services amount, plus our bylaw revenue, which is our own bylaws that have been paid directly to the town, for a total peace officer revenue. So we just really want to kind of highlight this and talk about the difficulties we have with receiving the funding for those tickets. And even some of the provincial tickets that get paid are not from this year. They could be from 5 years ago now. So we'd like to maintain where we're at and see, once we have that 3rd peace officer, where our ticket revenue is going to go. But we are going to be looking at doing some potential review of this over the next year, just to make sure that we're not over budgeting or under budgeting. We want to make sure that we're accurate on the funds that we're going to receive in a calendar year. A little bit different than the tickets that we write, which we still want to identify as well and show what the peace officers are doing. But when we're talking about the financial side of things, we need to talk about actual dollars received.
Director Vickers, can you explain the victim services, how that works?
Sure. So anytime there's like a victim of a major crime, so a domestic violence or other things, victim services will come, and it's no cost to the user or the victim. They come and they will help them through that day, get them to a hotel, get them to wherever they need to go. They help them make the phone calls. They will actually attend court with them if they need supports. So it's anything they need. They will work through a funeral if they need help with a funeral, making all those kinds of phone calls. Primarily, these are people who they've lost their spouse potentially. They've lost someone very important to them, and these people cannot, they don't have the ability to do these things on their own. So victim services does come in and take care of that. It does require costs. These victim services, they're all volunteers, so they don't receive any pay, but they are heavily trained each year, and they are provided the right services to do the work.
So what you're saying, that is billed to the municipality? Like,
So it's based off every ticket written. Every provincial ticket that's written pays a portion to the Victim Services Fund.
okay, gotcha.
But it's to pay for the people in this
Yes.
community that
Oh,
would eventually need those services. But yes, effectively, it is billed to the municipality as a cut on our revenue, yes.
Okay.
So just for curiosity, the differential between provincial tickets written and the paid, do we hear from the province? Is it people just don't pay?
So Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Bates, so it's interesting nowadays, you actually see a lot of where a member can actually go to jail for the weekend, and then their fine is written off. So, and there's nothing we can do about that. It's whatever the
No,
judge.
I'm just wondering if we get
We get very little from the provincial government, so all we get is what's called a join sheet. And after a ticket anytime a ticket goes before court, we will get a sheet with an update on what happened at that court. So that could be, you were convicted in absence because you
Yeah.
didn't show up.
No, I'm just
or
curious if
fine
they
fully paid.
categorize it and say, a quarter of those are purely just deadbeats?
Yeah, I
quarter
don't
are-
know that kind of
Are people that
information, yeah.
serve something, or, I'm just curious what
Yeah.
because obviously, to date, it's less than half that we get, so it's quite significant.
Mayor Barclay, also, when people register their vehicles, that's when it's tagged to. So it could be a year, it could be 5 years.
Yes.
So it could be quite a long delay in receiving that revenue.
What if we took 15-minute break? Is that
Sure.
okay?
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll get back started. We're on health and safety. So this is where all the health and safety costs come out of for the organization, as well as all the staff training specific to health and safety. So when we talk about training in other departments, those are job-specific training, maybe the conferences that they go to or a different training session. This is health and safety training. So hearing tests, confined space, fall protection, WMIS, first aid, basic life support, ground disturbance, the ground disturbance for a supervisor, cargo securement, safety officer training, and flagger training. So depending on who's renewing what each year, like even, for example, everyone in this office has to do WMIS every couple of years, right? So it's just, it all comes from here. The telecommunications that come out of this department outside of the health and safety officer's cell phone is the Work Alone app. So specifically in our operations departments, as well as other staff that do have to work alone, there is an app just to manage their safety, to make sure something doesn't happen to them and they're in a ditch somewhere. Even specifically when people are driving, going to a conference in Edmonton, they are supposed to be using this app, just a way that someone's checking in on them. And then safety supplies. So these are things like the hard hats, safety goggles, hearing protection, things like that. So we're going to get into the Public Works Operations Department now. So we had a little help trying to develop this picture for us this year, just so that it's actually Innisfil Public Works, right? So, you know, just especially with the new snow we're getting, it's kind of, you know. One of the things that was asked that we have a look at was some snow removal costing. So we have started, so since very late in 2021, we started tracking our specific job tasks in our operations departments, which includes roads, parks, and utilities. And one of those codes that we started tracking is winter hours, and that is what people put if they're doing road sanding, if they're doing snow removal, even just pushing the snow off to the side, anything like that. So we do have it tracked down. So we do have our winter hours and winter overtime hours that have been earmarked throughout there, as well as then the cost. So again, in 2021, we started very late in the year, so we really only got a handful of hours built in it. But in 22, 23, we had full years, and then 24 will also have a full year as well. So you can see that the total cost in 2022 was just over $213,000. 23, very static the same, $212,000. And this year, 24 so far to date, $165,000. If you go back and look, we did break the hours down by month. Now it is really hard for us to look at a single snow event and determine the total costing for that specific snowfall. Specifically because sometimes it snows, we have to start on our priority 1 routes, then potentially it snows again a week later, we start back again on our priority 1 route. So some of the priority 2 stages have not been finished on the first one, so we kind of did it by a monthly cost rather than a snow event cost, just to kind of see what those costing are. So you can kind of see that the hours from January, February to March January and February are pretty static across. In March 22, we had a little bit of less snow removal. 23 and 24, very standard the same. April, obviously, you can see that it starts to fall off with just minor, that's likely ice and culvert cleaning, things like that. As you can see in October, it's a very little. We had a little bit in 23, none in 22, and none in 24. November and December are pretty static. Obviously, we haven't had any of those hours yet for 24. And then we have the corresponding cost. These are actual costs, so it's not an average hourly rate associated by the hours total. So this is every single worker that worked, their actual cost. That's what these dollars are. Is there any questions on that?
Just one.
Yes.
So does this capture the snow removal that is just the result of, I think you said this, as a result of cleanup, not attached to a snow event, but it's like
Correct.
April and things are melting and we want to get the gravel off the road kind of idea?
Yes, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Wing. So yes, so anything to do with the removal of snow or the safety of snow on our roads. So that does include sanding as well, but that also includes people putting out the signs the next day for the snow removal. That's all an associated cost of that event. So when the snow happens, that is even just pushing the snow to the sides for the time being, or cleaning of snow as well. Go ahead.
Mayor Barclay. Can I ask Director Kennedy, just why would we want to remove snow in the spring in relation to, if we only have a layer? What's the benefit of of that process.
So yeah, the benefit during the springtime cleanup, it is mainly ice removal. It's clearing the gutters to create water flow, prevents, obviously, freeze up in our storm sewers, as well as prevents flooding. So flooding's a big risk, obviously, in the spring. If the ditches or the gutter lines are clear, that helps get that going. So that's the main purpose of springtime cleanup.
And just to build on that then, just because it's something that people talk about a lot, when we're picking up gravel, so we would prefer to pick up sand as opposed to flushing it down, right, okay. And that protects infrastructure from a larger perspective, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, because if it goes into our catch basins do have sumps. That's just another task. Then we are now flushing and sucking out our catch basins. So just helps to try and prevent that. Yep.
I would like to just note that these are staff costing. So if it doesn't snow, we may not account for snow hours, but we still have those costs identified. They're just doing something else now, right? So to remove our snow removal procedure isn't going to remove these costs in its entirety. It's just going to reallocate them to different tasks. Yes,
So
this-
can we just add to that then?
Sure.
So, given climate change and the impact that we're seeing even here, is that something then that if we start to notice that every year snow amounts are dropping, then that would be a permanent reallocation of resources? We would actually see a reduction in our snow removal budget as opposed to somewhere
We would be
else.
having a different conversation, yes. Where they would get reallocated to, do we have different job tasks that are still functional and appropriate during this time? If there's not snow, then there's likely other things that are happening, right? As our climate changes, we may not have snow right away, but maybe we're mowing much later now, and we're still growing and having to deal with that much later in the year as our snow system
I think
gets
that's
smaller.
an important narrative for us to start to develop, I think, because again, people want to know, right?
Yes. Now that we're tracking specific hours, we can see these trends year over year, and we're able to track in the months and how they're changing and differentiating from year to year, right? So it will likely be a very slow change, but as we can see, maybe in 5 years, maybe we don't have any snow in October and November, and it's just December that we're starting out now, and it could be changing.
I think it's interesting on that point that the trend isn't less, like when you look at January, February, March, April,
Yes.
right? It's actually more, which is kind of surprising,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I'll just chime in. The observations I saw in this last spring, we did have some icing that I've never seen before. Like, I remember walking through Upland Aspen and there was ice that it was going across the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And then next year it'll be different. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the challenges every year that we have is obviously with ice, it's different than snow. Like, yeah, the services are the same. It's just, yeah, what are we doing to remove it versus just maintaining? So it's a challenge every year. As you can see from the hours, it changes later in the year. Sometimes it's earlier. It's all dependent.
As the town grows and there is more subdivisions that are developed, specifically Bella Vista, that is a new service that they now have to go clean. As a new subdivision gets finished, even the Southwest Industrial now will have to be cleaned for snow removal as well. So as we add those things, those hours likely are going to increase as well and show those costs are going to increase, but that's just because we're expanding, so. Okay, as we move into roads, parks, and utilities, we just like to identify the infrastructure and what they kind of maintain each year. As well as the operation complaints. So 22, it was 273. 23, it was 270, so pretty standard for those numbers. In 2024 to date, we've received about 228 complaints that have been earmarked specifically to the operations department. So this could be the tree fell down, this could be, yeah, I need my snow removal, they left a ridge for me, whatever it is that they do. So, a lot of utilities, water down the street, anything like that.
so Director Vickers, in the one program you spoke about and the heat mapping, like, is that something that you could track in that program, or some software program where you can kind of see, well, the bulk of the complaints are X, and now how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, to Mayor Barclay, yeah, we can definitely break that down into type of complaints, areas. So that was one of the benefits of the Catalyst software, is now being able to, like before we were tracking it through Civic Web, which is great software as well. It does track the stats, it just doesn't provide a mapping for us. So this just gives us that added detail.
I could provide a breakdown of those 228 claims or complaints and where they go, but this mapping software, once we fully get it going, we would be able to see, hey, is there a reason that there's 13 complaints on this one street about dogs, or one, just as an example, I don't know, just as an example. It will just give us greater clarity on where to patrol the peace officers, where to put investment and things like that. Just help us do better decision-making. Okay, so we'll get into roads. They do have an operating project for $115,000. Inside that it's called an infrastructure study. It's just dollars if we need to hire out an engineer, do any kind of review for us, just that we have some dollars built into the budget. As well, there is a bunch of sidewalk repairs and a section of new sidewalk that's earmarked to come out of this line. Contracted services, so these are painting of our center lines. We don't do that internally, we do all the other painting, but the center lines on Main Street get painted by contractor. This would be sidewalk and any rink snow removal, any contracted snow removal, as well as dust control where needed. Clean harbors costs for any of those types of used oil or things like that we need to clean up, as well as the Main Street intersection and crosswalk, kind of those main crosswalks. We're having those professionally done. For summer staff, comes out of this budget. Again, electricity, I do have light poles. There is some electricity associated with the shop, but primarily that $530,000 is all the light poles. As well as we do our main transfer to the fleet reserve out of this budget at $290,000.
So, question, I haven't been down at night. Are there new light poles in the industrial park?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions on the roads, or? Okay, we'll move on to parks. So they do have an operating project as well for $25,000. This is specifically just for tree replacement this year. We do have 8 summer staff that will come in next summer. Contracted services, these are any porta potty rentals for any of the park facilities around town, as well as tree trimming. So we actually don't currently employ an arborist. So this would pay for contracted arborist services to come in and cut some trees. This is where the majority of our transfer to the just infrastructure repair and maintenance reserve at $350,000. We have our mower lease program out of here. We are seeing an increase from $46,000 to $57,000, and this is due to one of our leases is coming due this year, and we are having to renegotiate with a different vendor, and that is causing some increased costs. We are choosing to go to a different vendor due to our dissatisfaction with our current vendor. So we do want to transition to a new type of mower. And these are our leases that we have, the big mowers that the summer students will do all the cutting around town. As well as a purchase of equipment. So these are just the small tools, like if they have to do a weed whacker or any kind of those kinds of small tools will come out of there as well. And we just brought in a little bit of a stat for our trees and shrubs. So in 2024, we removed 26 trees. However, we planted 43. So we replaced the 26 that we removed, and we planted an additional 17. And then shrubs, we planted 57 this year. So we thought that was, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess just in regards to the operating project, so the $25,000, so we have applied for a grant for that program as well, to be part of the kind of national tree program. So haven't heard back on that yet. It's been quite a process, but we're hoping to hear back in the new year if we get that. So that'll help us with that operating project.
Your worship, to Director Kennedy, that was through FCM, right? Yep. I think that was the previous meeting we went to. All right, thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to public transportation, and this is the 2 PACE buses that we do have. So this year, or for 2025, sorry, the Pace Bus contribution will be $178,000. So that is $160,000 for the annual contract and $18,000 for chartered services. We will be receiving $20,000 as user fees, and then we do attribute $42,000 from the LGFF operating to help fund the Pace Bus program. They do have a transfer to reserve for $10,000 for replacements, as well as fuel costs of $15,000 on top of operating. So here's a bit of information about the Pace Bus. So they are operating 43 hours a week, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We had 4,806 passenger trips in the last 12 months, so that's averaging 253 users per month. Group booking has been utilized regularly 2 to 3 times per week. And the top origins are Autumn Grove, Dodds Lake Manor, and Sunset Manor, and the top destinations are the Medical Clinic, Co-op, and PharmaSave. So the chartered services, so this is averaging 6 to 8 trips per month, primarily to Red Deer or to Olds for medical appointments. And we have seen increased usage of app and digital payments.
I guess I'll ask Director Jenkins, her department. Is that an increase, Director Jenkins, of 4806?
Yeah, I can get you the specific stats, but we are definitely seeing an increase specifically on that group bookings. Primarily Sunset Manor, they're using it 2 to 3 times a week, coming down for lunches and things like that. We have also seen the one daycare utilizing it for swimming lessons, things like that, where they are utilizing the bus for group rates as well. We've definitely seen an increase on the out of town trips too. We're up to that sort of 6 to 8, where we were in that 3 to 4 when we first started. So definitely seeing more of that. And it is primarily for sort of specialty medical appointments. We get a report with what clinics they're going to and such.
And the group bookings, is it under 6 that we don't charge?
In terms of age, like
No,
for kids?
isn't there like groups of 6
So yeah,
or
for group
less?
bookings, I think it's 6 plus.
6 plus.
It's a group rate as opposed to a per head rate. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have
Okay.
to get the.
I was thinking that we had it was free or something for a small group, but that's obviously
It's not
correct.
completely free,
Yeah,
but you
okay.
don't pay the additional,
Yep.
you know, if you're taking 10 and you pay for 6
Yeah.
sort
No,
of thing.
okay, no, it's good. No, it's great to see the usage.
Yeah, so just the information that we presented in the budget presentation last year was 64 rides per week. So this is averaging 253 per month. Group bookings were 1 to 2 per week, and now it's 2 to 3, as well as chartered services were at capping at 6, and now we're at 6 to 8. So we can see those services slowly increasing, and we'll track that year over year. Okay, we'll get into storm sewer. So repairs and maintenance comes out of this for the storm system, including like culverts and things like that. Digs and repairs, flushing, any cammering of any lines comes out of there. We do have a catch basin repairs operating project that's coming out of this department this year. We kind of stagger this every other year we do this, so this is the year that we will be undertaking that operating project. And then our transfer to reserve, this is one of the departments that is kind of self-funded from utility user fees. So it does not take any taxpayers' dollars to fund this department. And our transfer to reserve is $9,675. Okay, so we're gonna move into water. So we are seeing an increase in our consumption costs based on our 5-year average. We have received a 15-cent increase from the commission, and we are doing a 10-cent operating increase for ourselves. So that is a 25-cent increase for water. Mountain View Regional Water Commission, we are seeing a 15-cent increase for 2025, so that is going up to $1.95 million. We do have a handful of operating projects, so we do have Reservoir 2 and 3 cleaning, as well as a valve repair replacement project. Contracted services, so we do have pay some significant dollars for our SCADA systems, so this is what monitors our water systems for us. Any of the first calls that we have to do or instrument tests. A summer student is shared with wastewater, so it's half here, half under the wastewater department. And then we do some transfers to reserve. So we do a set $50,000 to the utility fleet capital reserve. And then the balance of this department works out to $175,966. That will go to the utility capital reserve replacement. So I do have our water rate forecast and kind of where our transfer to reserve is. So you see in 2025, we are seeing that 25-cent increase, where was a 15-cent from the commission and a 10-cent for us. We have attributed a 15-cent increase across the years from 26, 27, 28, and 29. We are looking to get some certainty on outlook pricing from the commissions. Unfortunately, we don't have that today, but as soon as we do have those numbers, we'll bring that to council for your review and comments at that time. But as you can see, that by maintaining only a 15-cent increase and not attributing an increase to the commission in those further years, you can see that that transfer to reserve just kind of slowly dwindles. We're still in a good position this year. We are transferring to reserve, but we want to make sure that this doesn't decrease, that it does actually start increasing as those transfers happen. Okay, so wastewater. We are seeing a consumption increase. We did receive an 11-cent increase from the commission, and we are doing a 20-cent increase operationally for the organization. Again, the SRD commission is going up to $2.46 million, again, based on the 5-year average of water usage, or wastewater usage, I guess. Operating projects, we do have $50,000. This is for manhole repairs and replacements. Engineering services for $65,000 comes out of this department. Summer student, again, is shared with water. Contracted services, they pay for SCADA first calls, instrument tests as well as coveralls come out of here. So we do transfer to the utility fleet capital reserve in the amount of $75,000. And this year we are actually transferring to reserve for the wastewater department in the amount of $41,181. If you can see the wastewater rate forecast, we have attributed the 31 cents increase this year, and again, that gets us that 41,000 transfer to reserve. In 26 to 29, we are attributing a 20-cent increase, and as you can see, our transfer to reserve is slowly increasing now to 2029. We're putting in 209. However, we have to wait for the commission increases, and we are looking at long-term planning for that as well. Yes.
So the question I have is, earlier in your summary, I think you said there was an average of
It's $560
Per household.
per household, and that's on an average 10 cubic meter. So that's basically $3.10 increase for wastewater services and $2.50 increase for water services, and that's where you get your $560 increase.
So how do we rationalize the rest of the cost, though, which is borne by, obviously, industry, I guess, and business? If we take the total costs, which are the commissions, plus the operating costs, so all of these happen outside of the tax base.
That's correct.
But if I look at I use when I kind of normalize what a tax increase, right now we're $100,000 is an approximate 1% tax
Correct,
increase
yes.
to everybody. So if we look at all the costs of the water and the wastewater together, the increase is very significant. So that's borne out over our entire community.
Yes, but it is a consumption-based fee, so you really are paying for usage, right? So it's not that everyone's not paying the similar
I know, but then
increase.
I guess the point I'm making is the portion that is our operating portion is in fact town operations being absorbed by that consumption.
Yes, definitely
and
some,
so,
yes.
Yeah, you're getting a tax that way, if you will. I'm not making a point other than just the realization that it's happening. Because at the end, it's still the same people paying to run their businesses or their homes. Thank you.
So back when we joined the SRD line, there was a 2020 plan in place for the water rate. We did not follow that 2020 plan. Had we followed just a specific 20-cent increase per year since 2015, we would be sitting at 445, and we're sitting at 431, so we're still well under where we should be within that 2020 plan. And then I do have the utility transfer to reserves. It may be premature, we didn't talk about garbage yet, but we are seeing that in 2025, 226, 2026, it goes up to 325, and then by 2029, we're actually inputting $611,000 into that utility reserve, which is pretty amazing. As you can see, that transfer to reserve from the garbage is drastically increased, and that is through the EPR program application. So the first couple of years, you can see that we're paying back the garbage carts, and I do have a slide that kind of outlines that and show us when we'll be paid back for the garbage carts, and then the balance would then get transitioned into that utility reserve. Okay, we'll talk about it now. So right now, 186,000 is going into that general cap reserve to pay back the purchase of the bins, and then just EPR is starting on April 1st, 2025 next year, or it's scheduled to start. So here is our garbage carts. So we did purchase $626,000 worth of garbage carts. The garbage and organic bins were purchased in 2019, and then the recycle bins were followed up in 2022. We have had 4 years of payback. So you can see the first year we didn't make enough to pay back that year, but the rest of the years we did. The balance outstanding based off if we take what we've currently paid back is $500,690. If we take this year, we can only attribute the original $34,024, but then you can see in 25 we have 186, 26, 234, and the balance will be paid off in 2027 with the remaining payment of $45,883 back into the general cap reserve, and then our garbage carts will be fully paid for. And then those dollars will likely be repositioned into the utility investment reserve. So, any questions on that?
Director Vickers, I know it's impossible to predict the future, but there's potentially, I don't know, a risk, I guess, in the province. You know, provincially, there's a budget that's potentially in deficit position if we don't see oil rise. I think it's budgeted 71. We've been under 70 for a bit now. So I've seen estimates of a $1.5 billion deficit, which would cause spending freezes or decreases at the provincial level, which may impact us even more when we take a look at LGFF. And I'm wondering if we know next year, well, the next 2 years, LGFF, but I think if we take a look at potential revenue decrease and we have our base amount of LGFF, which I'm not exactly sure what that number is, and we don't have the 100% revenue growth attached to it, and maybe we have a decrease attached to it.
Yes, LGFF in 2026 has gone down for the town of Innisfil.
And how much more is it going to go down? And I know that's impossible to predict, but I think it's a huge risk. I think there's other risks, just, you know, geopolitically. We don't know what's going to happen with imports into the U.S. and tariffs and everything. So I know it's kind of that macro picture, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty for us in the next 3 or 4 years, and because we're so tied to oil.
Yes, Alberta, the province of Alberta is very tied to oil, yes.
Yeah, so anyway, just want to throw that out there, that we keep that in mind, that there's so much uncertainty going forward, and you know, we think there's going to be these funds there, but we don't know what else will get cut, and if there is a significant deficit at the provincial level.
Yes, hopefully, this shouldn't get cut. It is run by an independent company, but you never know, I guess.
I mean, this is, but I'm just saying overall, like
That's right.
with
Other provincial grant funding that we
Yeah.
receive, operating grants, dollars could be cut drastically, absolutely. And that's
thanks.
just one more thing that gets cut for municipalities that gets downloaded for us to implement, right? So. Okay, so these are the proposed utility rates for 2025. We are only seeing 2 different changes. So water is going to go to $3.26 based on budget passing. That is the increase of 25 cents per cubic meter. And then sewer is going up 31 cents from $4 to $4.31, that increase of 31 cents.
I'm wondering if you could share with us at some point this week consumption, so water and wastewater. I guess we're not consuming wastewater, but we're
We use it.
yeah,
We
sending it
pay,
away.
we pay for it, yeah.
But I'm assuming both those are maybe less.
Yeah, we do track
maybe less
that.
than what they have been, just,
Yeah, and it is based on that 5-year average,
Yeah.
so, because we really don't know what it's going to be this year, and we do have to account for new growth, new houses being built as well, but we can definitely get that information for you, for sure.
thanks.
Okay, so we always, oh, sorry, Gavin.
Just to
yes.
comment on the macro thing again, and it's just for us all to realize, sitting on the Water Commission, it's so interesting to see. So as it's just a fact of life, as these rates go up, people will want to use less, and the Water Commission has one source, which is the water they sell. And I mean, it's very evident around town, even though we had a very dry year, that many, many people have completely quit watering their lawns and that sort of thing. And no, but the reality is, I'm not sure where it'll lead, but I just see it chasing its tail, that as the rates go up, we'll probably buy less water on average.
Yep. And
I
unfortunately.
mean, we'll increase if we add a new big business or a few houses or whatever, but it is yeah, just seeing the results of it from the commission side, and they have no other source. It's
And they have a
one-
budget, and they need to maintain their budget dollars.
Every one of their people that live in Innisfail will pay our tax increase. It's just the circle that we keep chasing. Thank you.
Okay, so we do always do a comparison of kind of that central Alberta areas. And I just would like to disclose first that the rates that we input for Innisfail are the new proposed rates, and the rates for everyone else are their current rates that we can find through their current utility rates and fees bylaw or on their website. So as you can see, Bowden and Penhold have always kind of been a little bit cheaper than us, and this is all based on 10 cubes of water. And then we have Sylvan Lake Olds, Black Falls, and Lacombe are always a little bit more expensive. So this is right in line, kind of where we want to sit. And again, those other communities will probably be some sort of increase on their own that will slowly increase their own kind of costing, so. Okay, we'll move on to FCSS here. So we do see that continued grant revenue increased. We are seeing that increase up to $216,000. We did do some changes to internal programs and grants to others. You can see that we lowered the grants to others to $105,000 from $129,000, increased internal programs up to $37,600, and we have increased a part-time staff to incorporate so that they can do some of the programming internally and things like that. So it's not quite a net zero, but it's very close to the removing of grants to others, just reshifting some of those costs around. But there is a part-time staff on this line now, and that is an increase, not an increased staff, we're just gonna reuse current part-time staff, but that they will now allocate some of their hours when they're doing FCSS programming. And that could be simply opening doors for movers and groovers or like things like that, right?
I think it'd be important to disclose why that shift is from external programs to more in-house.
Sure, so one of the primary programs, we've taken over the facilitation of the Memory Cafe program, so our internal staff are the facilitators of that program, so that's the primary hour increase. And we are looking at some opportunities to do that as well. I know some of our partners, struggle with the funding and the ability to do that facilitation on an ongoing basis, so we've been able to pick up some of that slack. We've also seen a decrease in demand through our FCSS funding over the last number of years. Going back to even 2016, we were granting out $180,000 to external organizations, and that's sort of gone down in recent years where we aren't getting the same requisitions, and yeah, just having that internal capacity to be able to directly offer programs.
Good. Okay, we'll move on to cemetery. Little changed in the cemetery outside of we did increase that transfer to reserve. It is going to the perpetual care reserve. We did just kind of bring this up to more the actuals that we've seen last year and this year. This is just an in and an out on our budget. We do not maintain the perpetual care funds for ourselves. We transfer it to reserve for future upkeep of current cemetery headstones and applications that are in there. And again, this does have one summer staff from the Parks Department just to share the cost to the cemetery because they do spend a significant time cleaning the grass and weed whacking and whatnot. Okay, so we'll move to our municipal planning services, or municipal planning. So first thing is safety code levy. We do earmark it at $3,000. This is just an in and out on our budget, so we identify it as revenue, and then we do have a corresponding expense side as well that will match each other. Planning services has gone down significantly this year, down to $10,000. That is for, a small portion of that is for our current PCPS contract, as well as professional support. And one of the main reasons why we were able to lower this planning services is the addition of our Planner 1 this year, or this past year. So we were able to reallocate the funds to the staff costing versus paying out to that contracted service. We still have our grants to others sitting at $70,000. This is for the facade and infill programs. And we are seeing a $40,000 operating project, and that is earmarked for public art and downtown initiatives. So this can be built up in a number of different ways. Downtown initiatives could be on the new lots that we purchased and what that's going to look like kind of in next summer. How do we make sure that's usable? And what is it that we do for public art? I know that we're supposed to be having our report come up due soon, and what that will tell you, at least this will then give us some dollars to work through that, at least for the first year.
Mayor Barclay, can I ask a question through to Director Vickers? Just going back to the facade and infill, is it possible to get numbers relative to how those two programs are subscribed or have been over the past couple of years?
Absolutely. Oops. Okay. Okay, we did want to kind of just list the stats of our building and development permits, just our historical permits issued. So we do have tracking from 2017 all the way to 2024. Now, and I can let Director Jenkins comment on the numbers specifically, but you can see that those building numbers are slowly just increasing, and now we're at 127. We've never been over 100 for building permits.
Yeah, so we're certainly seeing increase in building permit activity over the last number of years. The development permits, it's a little bit misleading, largely because 2019 we made some substantial changes to the land use bylaw as to what requires a permit. So things like home occupation class 1s used to require a development permit. You don't need a development permit, so that is a chunk of permit numbers. Same thing for things like uncovered decks. You don't need a development permit anymore. You just get a building permit for those. So the development numbers aren't quite as indicative of activity, but we certainly are seeing increased activity. We've noted that to council on the permit values. But unfortunately, sometimes it takes just as long to issue a permit for basement development as it does for something like Deep Sky.
Yeah.
So.
Can you give us just a quick summary of 4 or 5 things that are building permits? Obviously, houses, but our housing starts are considered.
Like that would be a building permit that's not a development permit, those types of things. So tenant improvements are typically building, so somebody new moves into a bay. So Starbucks, for example, there was a development permit for that building. It identified those 5 bays. They don't have to come in and get a building or a development permit to say we're gonna be a Starbucks, but they do need a building permit for the interior improvements and all of that sort of thing.
What about in the residential, like a garage or?
So all a garage, basement development, new house, you would all need both permits for.
Okay.
Decks, hot tubs, things like that, you would need a building permit, but you don't need a development permit.
Okay, no, that helps, thank you.
Okay, So we'll move on to our subdivision land department. So this is another one of those departments that is self-funded and don't require taxpayer dollars. So really any land rental income and land sales is intended to offset the needs for this department. So we are seeing that big increase into the land rental income. Deep Sky's $50,000 year, basically their year one fee to us is identified in this income in this department. Land sales, we are capping it at about $900,000 this year. We have 3 properties that are 3 lots that will close in 2025, so there's earmarked for that, and that really only leaves us for 1 Southwest industrial lot to be sold. And outside of that, the town of Innisfil has no more lots yet to sell. We really have no more residential lots until the further subdivision for the Southwest Residential goes through and is official. Then we would have a bulk of lots to sell. That could change this department if that happens next year and we're able to sell lots before the end of the year. So that could change. But again, because this is not a tax-funded department and the balance just goes to reserve, hopefully we'll sell tons of houses and we can put a lot of money to reserves this year. One of the big things is we do have our mortgage for the Southwest Industrial lot coming out of this department. It is in 2025, $704,000. So the only risk that I would like to say is that if for some reason we don't end up selling any plot of land in the Southwest Industrial, we will have to make a transfer and fund this from taxpayer dollars or pull from reserves or something like that for this year.
So could you repeat part of that again? Sorry. You mentioned, or maybe I heard wrong, that there'd only be 1 industrial lot left? Or
No.
you said?
We're banking on that we're going to sell 1 lot
Okay,
out of
gotcha.
these dollars.
Okay.
We have 3 residential lots that will close in 2025,
Okay.
and there are no other town-owned lots for sale after that. There are a number of other lots throughout town, but they're not owned by the town, so we couldn't attribute the revenue in
Okay.
that way.
And then tell me about the potential mortgage on Southwest, well, the industrial infrastructure. I guess we know what that is. So the interest rate on that, Director Vickers, when that was taken out, I think it was over 5 or something?
I would have to go look at, I believe
Okay.
it's just under 5, like
Under 5.
4.89, 4.74.
And do we know where it is now, current rate is now?
I can have a quick look.
And you don't have to tell me right now, you could bring that back, but just curious what the difference might be in that payment depending on today's rates and,
Yes, when we look at rates, it's the rate that we pulled in that moment and the payment
Yep.
date. Hopefully, when we go to take it, rates are coming down. Hopefully that, even we've been planning for this pool, we've been earmarking that $910,000. Hopefully, the interest rate goes down to a point where maybe it's $850,000 or $820, and we have a little bit of gap.
but on the Southwest, we have that debenture.
Yes,
So
I'm
I
gonna-
guess I'm just curious, the difference between the rate when we took that out and what the rate is today, and I don't need to know right now.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be doing my job from the informal Senate if I didn't voice that I've had at least one person say loud and clear that if we were to subdivide one of our lots, they would be all over buying a portion of it, that they find them big
In the Southwest.
in the Southwest Industrial.
So again, if, we may have to come back and talk about this department if all of a sudden we get this new subdivision built and all of a sudden we're selling and we're pre-selling a whole bunch of lots, we may have to come back in with some budget adjustments just to clean up the budget to make sure it's more formalized. But that would come next summer or next year when we have that all identified.
So with the remark from Councillor Bates, like, is that a potential? Can that person be sent in to see planning or is it not possible?
So at this point, we're not looking to subdivide below that 3-acre size, particularly because some of the interest we have had is from those larger land developers that are going to need those bigger pieces and to start carving it up for sort of, 1 acre for someone to build a shop. We've kind of had more of a vision set on sort of some of those larger manufacturing, energy intensive, tax intensive types of developments.
Okay, we'll move on to campground. So the Anthony Hendy Campground is operated by the Lions Club here in Innisfil. The services and programs provided are listed there. We do have 42 trailer sites, 5 tenting sites. They do have water available and operational bathrooms with toilets and showers. We did identify a transfer to reserve for $8,500 to go towards the maintenance of the buildings that are there, such as the wash bathroom and the cooking hut, I guess. The total cost for the department did increase slightly by about $700, I think, for the cost of utilities. Other than that, it stayed pretty stagnant for the year. So economic development, so we do see some membership fees here specific to economic development. Contracted services for $50,000. This is specifically just to support the economic development officer or things like that. We do have that operating project of $100,000 sitting here. This is the, what is it called, Clean Tech? Yeah. The Clean Tech initiative is kind of earmarked out of this department. We do have this grants to others support to support economic development in the amount of $10,000. The advertising was originally, there was an advertising line here. We have transitioned that to our communications department. So our communications manager originally kind of managed both of these departments. Now that we have our economic development officer, we need to separate those, so we're just moving that advertising across. So some of the stuff that economic development has done this year is we do have our new EDO onboarding, the Power of Place strategy review and update, the Brood regional project, community and property inventory promotion, Southwest Industrial Land Sales is still a focus of ours, rural entrepreneur and renewal program, continued collaboration with the chamber, our energy innovation fair, and then that industrial clean tech initiative for an operating project.
Question, website. There's kind of sort of a ACDev website, and would that be something that it's been discussed looking at to get that up and operating?
So unfortunately, the website sort of framework that we were provided with a previous consultant is not the most functional and something that
why I'm
is
asking.
in a format that can be easily launched. Within the Clean Tech Initiative, there is a website and marketing component that we're looking to include in the costs that would go along with that. But outside of that sort of grant initiative, we don't have dollars specifically allocated to website at this point.
So I guess my question is, I believe in the Power of Place strategy. It's likely in there, which is why it started. But you know, what it is right now, I don't think is necessarily beneficial to our town. I mean, I don't even think our own lots are on there. It's all MLS. Should that be taken down? And it's under construction and eliminated for the time being, because in my opinion, not the economic development officer, but I think a functioning website is so important to our organization, and you know, get somebody to do that properly, and just my opinion.
Yeah, it's something we've explored. We've met with a few different organizations that specifically focus on ECDev websites. That's what they do. And making sure that it's something that's going to be functional for us to be able to utilize moving forward. The ECDev platform that the committee would have seen, yes, it is still active if you go there. We don't direct any traffic to that website at this time, but yeah, we can
I think
get that.
I think it should be taken down personally. I mean, it has an old video on it, and it's it's.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Wing.
Thanks. This is not our budget related at all, but just a comment. The new electronic sign on the highway is up and active, and you can see Innisfail now for miles. We came home from Red Deer last night, and literally you can see that sign for miles. And so, if anyone thought they were going to drive by Innisfail and not notice us before, they're not going to get away with it now. So, just thanks to the chamber. I know that's been a huge amount of work, and it looks great.
And we do have advertising purchased on that
Totally,
sign, so
yeah. It's.
I hadn't seen it lit up yet.
It's beautiful, blinding but beautiful.
Most electronic signs like that do end up having to be turned down. All of a sudden, they get reported to AT, and then they have to dial them back a little bit.
Okay, so we'll move on to communications. So contracted services has been moved to the admin department, so that specifically was the town app that got moved from here to ours. Again, advertising, it is increased to 50,000, but that is the original $35,000 budget, including the 15,000 from the economic development department. So it's looking like an increase, but it's really not. And then the main thing is our special events comes out of here, and you can have listed, it's maybe not an exhaustive list, but it's definitely some of the big ones that we do. So the parade, registration night, we do that twice per year, Youth and Seniors Week, Hillside Vibes, the skate park community event, Christmas tree lighting, Canada Day, you can see that the fireworks are new coming out of this line item. Community awards, Family Day, and then Winterfest also. Any type of supports that we have to do will come out of here, even if it's not a program that we're fully managing, any costs will come out of here.
Sorry, can we just talk about the app, right? I guess go back to the website again a little bit, and like, is there an opportunity for, I don't know, I'll ask Councillor Dunham, like broadband to be increased? Like, it's a bit slow. When you go onto our website, there's a bit of a delay, and then it's there. You go onto the app and you go into events, and there's a bit of a delay, and we know how everything nowadays is, right? Need to have it right now. And so I'm not sure, is that a broadband issue that we have at the town office, or?
That, Mayor Barclay, would be very hard to determine, because who has slow on the app? It could be their phone, it could be their own service. Where's the Wi-Fi that they're on? Are they far away from the nearest tower?
Well, I've even noticed, like, if you're on a Zoom in here, and, you know, at times it's buffering, and just wondered if that could be looked into.
After
Or maybe you already know.
Well, we've been meeting recently with TELUS, trying to kind of determine that. What the levels of broadband do we have in the community? We are working with TELUS right now to come actually speak to council, likely in a closed door session, so that they can come and provide those kinds of as well to you. We are working through talking about the town specific buildings as well, and working through what do we have coming into these buildings, and then furthermore, what do we need coming into these buildings, and then rationalizing the two. So we are undertaking those kinds of reviews right now. Unfortunately, it has been slow moving, trying to contact TELUS.
Yeah.
So, but we've made a pretty amazing contact with them right now, who has been really attentive to us, and we've had a number of meetings now since our first initial meeting with them. So we will get to the bottom of that information. and
That's
provide to
great,
council.
thanks. And I think even for industry too, or
Yes.
business, what
Yes,
their
we're
future
talking
needs.
about
And
the entire town,
Yeah.
so not just residential, but we have specifically talked about business-related needs as well.
Okay.
We have had a few specific businesses tell us their concerns about
Mm-hmm.
them, about what they're receiving for broadband. So we are definitely looking into that
Yeah,
for sure.
great, thank you.
Okay, so community services, so we did kind of do a big department change in this department. We used to have community services admin, and then we also used to have community services programs. That was, we feel like they were done that way because we had certain staff that managed those departments. We no longer have those certain staff members, and they're managed by the same people. So we have actually combined community service admin and community services programs into the newly just community services department. So when we get into the binder, there is actually a breakdown of what that is, right? So we can see here was the budget amount for these two departments, and then added up so you can follow the link from last year to this year kind of thing, right? So this year it does have one summer student inside this department. That is traditionally our skate park attendant that would come out of here. Any contracted services, there is $15,000 for that. Any instructors, yoga in this park, anything like that. There is joint use, so there is revenue for the joint use attached to this department in the form of rentals from the gyms. 100% of that money is saved. We do not keep that money for our own operating. And we net off any expenses that the joint use, through the joint use committee, has authorized, specifically things like new netting or basketballs or volleyballs. I think we bought a score clock in the past couple of years. So all the funds that we earn, we either pay for those things and then we transfer it into a special reserve called the Joint Use Reserve. And going year to year, then they can request certain purchases. And this way, we get the use of the facility, and then they get increased equipment for the use of the school for their students, and then we also then get the use of that equipment as well. So grants to others, there is kind of quite a few sitting out of this department. So we are seeing the $30,000 grants to others to the Historical Village. You see the $13,000 here for what was our recreation kind of granting last year is now broken out into two separate dollar amounts. So it's still the same dollar separated into two different departments or areas. And these are specifically linked to the new recreation grant programs that was brought to you just a few weeks ago. So the $10,000 is recreation, culture, and tourism grant, and then we have $3,000 for sport tourism. We still have the $20,000 elemental energy grant. We do have that revenue offsetting this grant, so it is a net impact to the department. And then last year was the first year we identified $5,000 just for pool passes, as we felt that using external dollars to pay ourselves for pool passes was not right, and we didn't want to do that, so we wanted to just offer $5,000 internally for our own pool passes as well to increase the spending dollars of that $20,000 from elemental energy. Okay, so Arena, we do have that Red Deer County contributions. It has indexed as per our contract to $192,000 this year. We do see some contracted services in the amount of $25,000. This goes for security services for the arena, the ice painting that we have to do annually, and any board cleaning services we do. As well, we have identified a transfer to reserve in the amount of $100,000, sorry.
Just one question.
Yes.
Through to Director Vickers. The security, are we a part of that sort of collective security group down in that area, like a bunch of the business? No, we're just on our own?
This would be our like security watch, just our
Our own.
our security for the building, and
Okay.
I don't know, does it include any of the camera monitoring? That's part of the security cost? Yeah. Yeah, so the camera monitoring for the facility as well as the like door security are things like that. So the arena, we have budgeted this, that it would be open for the entire year. However, as things change, we will change this department and come to you with different options about what that could look like. Again, just like the arena, we are seeing the same Red Deer County contributions of $192,000. We are earmarking that $100,000 transfer to reserve as well. We do have an operating project that's called basin repairs in the amount of $25,000. This obviously wouldn't happen if the project goes forward, but it is a need that needs to happen at some point, so either we'll do this or we'll do the pool project, so one or the other. We won't do this and then do the pool project as well, so. So cultural programs and facilities, so between this one and the library, we kind of just reshuffled the library costs appropriately to the library department. So the rentals and leases for the Henday Association used to be out of here, and any expenses for the LLC were out of this department, but we have transitioned those to the library department, which will be the next slide. So the rentals and leases from here are truly just the Kemp House, any rentals and leases from the Kemp House, the curling rink lease, and the senior center lease comes out of this department. We do see a transfer to reserve, specifically from the curling rink that comes out of this department. And last year was the first year, we've maintained that this year, that all town building repair costs, if they are projects that are undertaken by the finance, or not the finance manager, the facility manager, then they come out of this department for that department to manage. And then in the library,
Sorry to interrupt, there was a pre-budget council question regarding Kemp House.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yep, so there was a question essentially about how did we acquire the Kemp House and what are the town's obligations to keep it. So the Kemp House was historically designated in 1977. In 1989, it was purchased by the Alberta Historical Resources Fund. And in 1992 was taken over by the Dr. George Kemp House Preservation Society and was operated as a tea room and office space. In 2002, the town purchased the property from the Preservation Society for $73,000 plus $12,000 for the tea room and museum contents. So in 2010, the council made a motion actually to get rid of the property or to sell the property. By that point, the facility was not being used as a tea room or a rental space. Sort of around that 2002, the town was utilizing it as our neighborhood place facility. We were utilizing the space for internal operations. But by that 2010, I believe the Day Home Society was already in there, and it was generally just being used as rental space, similar to what it is now. So in 2010, council made a motion to proceed with the sale of the property. And at that time, all of the contents were actually returned to the Kemp family, I believe, and whoever else came forward for any of the historical stuff. It does appear that an expression of interest was issued in 2010 for the sale of the property. It was quite specific in terms of that it wasn't just for sale to anyone. It was an expression of interest to someone to operate it as either a museum or some sort of tea room, that kind of thing. I can't see that there were any actual submissions that came back at that 2010 timeframe. I get a sense that Councillor Heistad has some context for us, but go ahead. Oh,
I think your information is bang on, and what I recall was nobody was coming forward to purchase it because it was very difficult, the functioning of the building as well, and accessibility at that time. Yeah, and then, yeah.
And I guess, yeah, just to add, so it is a provincially designated resource. So we would have to look into whether there are limitations on that disposition. There is potential for some grant funding if you do various upgrades. But again, the costs of those upgrades are often substantially more because you are dealing in a historical property. Right now, the property is rented, so upstairs is the Family Day Home Society. We have the psychologist uses one of the rooms, and then Karen Scarlett, I think it's about $360 a month of rental revenue is generated from the facility. So again, kind of separate from budget discussions, but if council is interested in having, sort of further exploration of feasibility and options for that space, that's certainly something we can bring forward in the new year.
Yeah, even if it's something that we keep, what do we use that space for? Potentially office space for full office staff, right, potentially, or other things like that.
So I asked the question, and I did just after we were presented a week or so ago with some of the outlook of what it would cost to keep it up. And in my mind, I compare it to the LLC, and it's almost the same to keep the two up. It concerns me in the long run, and we don't have to involve budget, but I think down the road it is something we need to look at. It. What are the options, and what does make sense, and what is affordable? So yeah, it doesn't need any more discussion here, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe what you could do, Director Vickers, sometime is bring back to us like the operating costs on that building, and then
Yeah, the cost versus the revenue. We do
Yeah.
receive revenue as well. Do you want that during this week, or is that can come when we're talking about the Kemp House specifically on its own kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, I don't need it this week for sure.
It would change the budget very minimally. There is not a whole lot of costs associated to the annual maintenance of the Kemp House, and then there is offsetting revenue. It's probably very similar to a net effect on the department, but. Okay, so we'll move on to the library. So the grants to others is our Innisfil Library requisition, as well as the Parkland Regional Library requisition. This has not changed in our budget dollars from this year to last year. It's still sitting at that 227, as well as all revenue and expenses for the library LLC, any rentals for the LLC room as well. So now when we look at this library department, it's encompassing of all the revenue and expenses for the whole building. Okay, we'll move on. So here's a list of all of our specific operating projects that are within the budget. So you do see the Fire Master Services Plan, the Fire Cadet Program, and so on. Does anyone have any questions about these specifically? Again, we will get into these when we do the specific departmental reports by department, and we can ask those questions later as well. So when we brought you the potential budget earlier, it was at about a 6.5 or so % increase. We did come back and we were able to find some efficiencies in 2024 for unspent dollars to carry these dollars over to next year. So one specifically, the ECC exercise, as I kind of indicated already, because it's happening in February for the province, it's still in their same calendar year, but for us, it's a different year. So we would like to transfer that dollars from this year to next year to offset that. Same with the Fire Services Master Plan. $35,000 was earmarked as revenue or as expense this year. We would like to carry that over for next year so that, or in '25, we're not seeing that hit on our budget next year. We're taking it this year instead. The grants to others, this comes out of the planning department. So this is grants to others for economic development initiatives or if they need help for $10,000, as well as the infill program. We'd like to carry over $55,000. So we were able to find $105,000 kind of as a way to free up a tax % increase as a way to reallocate that to this year. So we're not canceling these programs, but we were able to find a different funding source for them, kind of.
One quick question, relative to the infill program, how many, do we know, like, is there currently an inventory of lots that are for sale that would qualify for that grant? And how are we letting people know about it?
So typically, whenever we have applications on infill properties, we do provide that information to them. So we have issued one infill incentive grant this year. We have a couple others that are in the works, but they won't be paid out by the end of 2024. Okay. But really, it's sort of interacting directly when we get those inquiries on infill lots, ensuring that they track those costs so that they're able to capitalize. I believe we've only issued 3 total since the program has been active since 2021, I believe.
Okay. And are our realtors in town aware of the program, or is that?
I think a lot of them
would think that's
are,
an
yeah.
incentive to sell, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's coming, and you know we are carrying this dollar over. I feel like we will easily probably exhaust it in next year because we have 2 for sure that have already started the process, and we have some other ones that will be eligible for sure.
We do have a couple of things that were not able to be put in the budget as its current state, and we wanted to let council kind of decide if they would like them to be added or not. So this year, just like last year, STARS did come and do a presentation before council, and they did ask for a requisition amount. Last year, they wanted it tied to a per capita amount. This year, they said any amount is available. Currently, we have not identified any dollars in the budget for that, but that is an ask. The Citizens Perspective Survey, we did do one in 2021. We tried to do one in 2023 to do a mid kind of council cycle refresh. That did get bumped. It is a tight budget, so we have put it on this council budget considerations list. It would be about $40,000 to do a similar length of survey as we did before, and that would be up for council's consideration. The annual 2% increase investment into reserves, that was on top of what we've invested in currently. This is basically from the State of Infrastructure report that was brought to you by Director Kennedy. And kind of we provided some reserve recommendations that we do believe a 2% increase to investment in reserves annually to meet our gap in reserve funding. As well as the last item, we really don't have the funds for a radon program this year, so we did want to have council discuss on that. In talks with them, a program would be around that $5,000 mark. Obviously, that would be specifically tied to how many users of the program happened. But currently, it is not a funded program. And the last one, I do have the budget survey, and we'll talk about those as we go through our independent budgets slide by slide. But we did just kind of want to identify this line item, just how much of a tax increase would certain people be comfortable with covering. And this is on a monthly tax payment. So we do see about 45% would not like one, and 55% are okay with some varying type of tax increase. So the next set would be salary discussion, and that would be an in-camera portion of the meeting. So
Juanita just indicated lunch will be at 12.
So should we wait and stop now, and then we can do the in-camera portion immediately after lunch? And then, go in. Okay, perfect.